If you think that the first thing you're doing is taking away my right to protect myself, when we're here to protest police brutality, someone being murdered by a police officer, the last thing that you're going to do is take away my right to defend myself.
You couldn't have 10 different Martin Luther Kings, you know, because they're like, there's different movements, right? Because there was Martin Luther King, there was Malcolm X, and there was like the Rosa Parks of the world. But those are the names you remember. You don't remember all the other names, and it's kind of better, I think, that they don't have names or anything like that. I just think it's too big to have just that one person that's leading all of it.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Let's get ready.
And just like a red, white, and blue phoenix rising from the ashes of political bipartisanship, we are back to Salt of the Streets podcast.
It is Saturday, June 13th, 12:58 p.m., episode 87.
I didn't go Southern this time. I'm so proud of myself. So welcome back, everybody, to the Salt of the Streets podcast, your one and only source for social and political commentary on all the weekly news, pop culture, and sports that you can handle. And the best part about the whole deal is all built from the ground up for people like you and me, the everyday normal person. So come down and join us as we discuss life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and continue our endless endeavor to bridge the gap between people and information. As always, we are your hosts. I'm Colin.
I am Donovan.
And today we are joined by another very special guest, Mr. Elijah, a.k.a. PNW NILS of Upper Left. Welcome back.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
It has been, what did we figure out, almost a year?
Just over 2 years.
Just over 2.
Yeah.
I feel older now when you say that.
Episode 16 was the last time they were here.
So go back and check out that
last time Elijah was here.
The Upper Left guys. And coming up on this week's show, we've got it's a loaded show. So we're going to be talking to NILS about, you know, the overall experience of the COVID and the shutdown, just kind of like we've been doing. I don't know if Don kind of prompted you for that one. It's just, we're trying to get a lot of people in to just talk about what it's been like for them. And everybody's got a different story. And then obviously the big elephant in the room of what's been going on the last couple of weeks. Because we kind of like, our last show was kind of like the worst timing possible.
Yeah.
It's like if we were offset a different week, because things that just kind of started to pop off and they were relatively localized to like Minneapolis area and some of the bigger cities, but then it just spread from there. I think we mentioned that there was protests that were planned in Seattle that day and had started.
Yes.
By the time we got done, it was like, oh, this is like huge.
Right, on the way home. So...
Yeah, because you texted me on the way home. You're like, dude, you need to check that out.
Because we had, the last guy that we had on here was a guy named Alex, who is one of Colin's coworker, well, one of his employees, I guess. And so we had Alex set up for like 2 weeks, you know, and so he just was already at the get. I hate that there's like just this world of optics, you know, that there is a question of like, well, why didn't you have a black eye on this first week when all this stuff is going on?
Yeah,
it's like, well, fuck, man, because we had this guy already signed up for 2 weeks. Like, it's just, you know, and so that's why I was extra clear with you when I asked you to be on. Like, we are not asking you to be on just because you're black and we're asking you to like represent the black opinion or anything. Like, we've had a guest list informally for months now of people we've been trying to get on. Denzo was on that list. Like, we've had these people and we decided when COVID happened that this was the best time to have every guest on to talk about what their experience was during Corona, and so that we could get an idea of what the everyman's experience was like, you know?
Because it's not going to go anywhere either at this point. It's still happening.
And so we did like 2 of those, I think, and then all this other stuff started to happen, and we said it before this time, it's just a strange fucking time, you know? It's just a weird time.
Because Joe Rogan had it right when he labeled his last special Strange Times.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even in 2020 yet, I don't think, right? It was 2019?
I honestly don't even know.
But it seems like a world away at this point.
Yeah, and so I remember seeing before I got here that day that there was supposed to be protest, and then on the way home... And maybe I checked Twitter or something before I left and saw something about the protest popping off. And so I started listening to the radio on the way home. And there was starting to be like riot type behavior, like people were breaking into businesses, like that type of shit was starting to happen. And so I had called, or they had just put in their curfew is what it was. And they were talking about bringing the National Guard potentially. Right. So I started watching when I got home, and that's when we got into that, interaction with our friend, and it was like when all that protest was going on that evening, she was like texting us. So,
and I'm on the Twitter machine right now, just kind of checking out some of the protests that are going off today. I'm looking at massive protests. Paris, I saw right before we started, a pretty huge one in Seattle was going on.
Right, well, in 2 weeks, we've gone from...
London, I think, is going on, too.
From those original protests in Seattle, and when we were here 2 weeks ago, we were covering the protests that had happened in Michigan or in Minnesota and stuff like that. In Atlanta.
You were talking about DePaul.
Yeah, I kept saying DePaul. I like
instead of St. Paul.
And he was like St. Paul, and I was like, no, DePaul, bitch. Like, no, I was very adamant. Like, no, this is what it is, and that's fucking stupid, dude. Just stupid.
It was funny.
Nonsense.
It was
anyway,
funny.
Yeah. So we've been talking about this an awful lot. Colin and I have on our social media. I mean, we've been sharing stuff. We've been just expressing ourselves on our social media. I'm at alpaca_Don on Instagram, and at Salt of the Street on Twitter. He's a Big Bird Offie on both those things. Salt of the Street and Instagram, Salt of the Street's Facebook, YouTube at Salt of the Street, saltofthestreets.com. Yeah, no, I got it. I'm knocking it all out first. PNW NILS, obviously at Salt. Fucking goddamn. See, you got me all fucked up, Colin. Give me the winks and stuff. PNW NILS on Twitter and Instagram. Yeah. So there's been a lot. Social media's been extra active, right? It's active. It is, but extra active. And I'm not on social media all the time. So have you made any type of? And I'm not like haven't you made a statement? But like, have you made any type of statements or anything on Instagram or on Twitter or anything like that? Because I don't feel like I've seen anything really from you since this happened.
No, I haven't. But it's also a weird time. So like,
yes.
It's a weird time, especially being a black male. It's like you need to, but at the same time, it's like I never see myself as an activist. I've never seen myself as like, obviously I've seen myself as someone to speak out against wrongdoings, right? But
yeah, you're a very good guy. I've known you for a long time. Yeah. You're a real good guy.
I don't believe in like, when the whole Blackout Tuesday was going through, I didn't necessarily agree with that. So like that's right when I was about to start posting, but I don't know. I just repost and reshare things, but that's about it. I don't see myself as like a huge activist.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think that there is definitely something to be said, especially in a time like right now, not to characterize it as just like this other time, but in just hectic and crazy times in America, there is definitely something to be said for listening as opposed to constantly talking, especially for
listening and thinking. I always try to come down on that side because it's important to really process what you're seeing, what you're hearing, all that good stuff, and try to figure out what you truly think before you try to just put out some kind of a reactionary statement. It just doesn't make sense. You're going to do yourself a disservice and possibly whatever movement you're trying to strive for if you just act reactionarily. That's a word, right? Reactionarily.
It sounds legit.
It sounds good. We're gonna go
on a reactionary basis.
Indeed.
So no, and I've tried to be really careful about only saying things on social media about shit that I really know about. That I'm like, I know this or like feel confident about this. I'm not making statements about, I don't know, systems and shit like that I don't know enough about history and things like that to try and draw these conclusions for myself, so I've been, not that I'm like I don't believe until I've whatever, but so I've been taking this time the last 2-3 weeks to just like consume information, just trying to learn about stuff that I didn't learn about, trying to educate myself about things. Like I was talking about social media, like this week I watched and did a lot of research about Black Panther Party and about Malcolm X, because I knew that those were things that I wasn't taught very much about in school, and I thought that because I was seeing all on social media about the Black Panther Party, about Malcolm X. These are things you can learn about. So I was trying to think about what are the things that I do know about this, and all I knew, or all I really remembered learning about Malcolm X in school is like he was a radical, like he was a part of the civil rights movement, but it was the militant portion of the civil rights movement, and he was the more aggressive part, and people didn't get down with it, most of the time. And
if MLK was the dove he was the hammer.
Right.
That's kind of what the general analogy I hear.
And that's what I remember learning in school, and so I started by just like watching Spike Lee's biopic with Denzel Washington. It was like 3.5 hours, starts from when Malcolm X was like a teenager and then goes through to when he dies, so started there just to get a general sense of it, because it's still a dramatic movie, so it's not going to be, it's Spike Lee, so it's going to be as close, obviously, as he can make it, but there's going to be more shit to be learned, because a man like Malcolm X, you can't boil his life down to a 3.5 hour movie and expect the entirety of it to be, there. Yeah. So I started there, and just even in that, learned so much shit that I didn't know, as far as, like, his personal transformations, like starting as what I had learned being more militant, like a lot of people called him, a black supremacist, like when after he got out of prison and he was first part of this, of the religion, and he's working with Elijah Muhammad. A lot of people called him a black supremacist, called all these people black supremacists, and he had more militant views of like, no, fuck that. Like, we're taking it. They brought us here. We're going to make it what it is, and over this time of being fucked over by his religion and then again by the government, and after he makes his pilgrimage to Mecca, just all that he learns while he's there about equality of races through his own religion, and coming back and seeing the error of his ways in the aggression that he had before, and just so much more, and it's not that I ever assumed Malcolm X was a very simple man, but just to understand more of the nuance that existed in himself, I had so much more respect for him and his personal growth, just learning so much throughout his life, and I think that it's really unfortunate that that's not the shit that we learned about him in school, or that I learned about him in school, because I think that that's much more important than he was just the more aggressive part of the civil rights movement. And I'll
speak more to that when we talk about,
I'm 25, so I obviously can't say for certain that's all that we learned, but I don't, even in, the section of school that we spend on, of black history, it's not, you're not learning in depth about Malcolm X unless we have a project about a historical figure and you're choosing Malcolm X as your historical figure, and that's how you're learning about him, And so I think that does a great disservice to him and to the movement itself, so as to not get a full breadth of understanding, even as good as you can do in just 12 years of elementary education. It's
our education
that's
system
what it's boiled down to.
Pretty garbage when you think about it.
Well, and not just that. The same goes for the Black Panther Party. It was the same type of shit that I learned about the Black Panther Party. Well, they're a bunch of radicals, and they're walking around with guns, and they're doing all this shit. And
they took over what was it? The city.
They went to the hall in LA, and so
that's like the only stuff you learn,
right? Generally, and so. Again, I start doing some more research about the Black Panther Party, and the first thing that they're talking about in this documentary is one of the first things they did was trying to proliferate the use of the Second Amendment through young black males to ensure their own safety and the safety of their interactions with the police. Okay, so the last time that I was here, before I came here, I was telling Colin about a conversation that I had with Denzel, and not trying to air out, private shit with Denzel. But I was asking him, what do you think about, learning to use guns?
I know we talked about that.
Right. And we had a fairly extended conversation about it. And I was very open. I understand and I see the potential downsides to this. I am not saying that there is not potential negatives to this, And so I found it very interesting to see my own ideas mirrored in something that I was taught was radicalized in school, and I think that that's really fucked up, that I'm 25 years old and something that I feel genuinely could provide actual good, right? To try and have young black males reclaim the Second Amendment so that they can be safe in their own rights, to know that I was taught that that's a radical ideology. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to get emotional, but I never put that into words. That's fucked up.
It is.
That's wrong. And this is not a message of white privilege or making anybody feel bad. But this is we grew up with a fairly good education system here. It is pretty good.
Compared to what though? That's the problem.
And that's fine. But I'm saying comparative to an education that says the fucking whatever, dude. But that seems so wrong to me, that something that is a genuine idea to me that I really think could provide good value was taught as a radical ideology when I was in school. I think that's really wrong, because I don't think that that's radical for me to think that Elijah and Denzel should be able to safely conceal carry a weapon and not be scared that they're more likely to be shot because of that. I think that's fucked up. I don't think that's radical.
And it's so counterintuitive to what the Second Amendment is supposed to be. Because the Second Amendment is for all citizens, period.
Yeah.
And if there is something that is driving certain sections of populations to not embrace their own rights, to protect themselves from, just say, the outward world, in all forms, because that's truly what the Second Amendment is for, so that you can protect yourself and your rights if no one else can at that time.
So let me ask you, since you talked to Denzel about the conversation that him and I had, what's your take on that? It's okay if you have not.
No, I have it. No, I have a take, because we talked about it like immediately after, like he was recording and we just had a session and he was talking about it. But
so you guys were like together.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, it's before. I'm happy to know that it inspired even a conversation. Whether it was this fucking guy is such a goddamn idiot trying to teach me to use a gun, like whatever it is, even if that's what it is, I'm happy that it inspired any type of conversation at all. So let me just say that before you continue, for everyone to know, even if it's a conversation about me being a fucking idiot, I'm happy that it produced any type of conversation.
For sure, yeah. It's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. But growing up, none of my family members I knew had guns or anything like that. It's just something you just don't talk about, right? And I think it's really a product of your environment. So us being blessed to be in like the north side of the states, a lot of stuff that we don't see.
Northwest specifically.
Yeah. A lot of things that we don't see. I don't know. We don't see a lot of the things that the South sees, right? And vice versa, right? But they would talk about guns, I would assume, way more than we would. My family never talked about it. Growing up, I know that my grandma had a shotgun, my dad had a shotgun. Like, they have guns. I just never knew about it, never really talked about it.
More backup home defense type of shit.
Yeah, but it's like something you never talk about, right? Unless like your uncles and aunts are coming over and, just get drunk and all that stuff. But being employed where I'm at now, which is a shipyard, everyone has guns. I never heard people like be fascinated, talk about guns as like a topic to bring up to like bond with someone. It's crazy to me still to this day.
It's a weird world.
It's crazy, right?
That's what I like to call, I think it's commonly called gun culture.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
The people that, you could probably attest to this, once you kind of get into that world, there's like a whole world to explore.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you can have bonding experiences just talking about guns or like talking about body armor or whatever the fuck. It opens up to this whole wide world. But if you're not part of that gun culture or have somebody close enough to you that is a part of that gun culture, then it generally just comes down to, kind of the layman's version of what guns are. I mean, they're dangerous tools that generally are built to kill people.
Yeah.
Why do I want to deal with that at all? I'm not into that. It's just real easy to not want to be involved in that, situation. Or you have like the family members that have a shotgun or something like that, or whatever it is for home defense or something. And then that they just don't even get into that culture of gun ownership and Second Amendment and all that stuff. So it's just real easy to not be exposed to that inner world of gun culture for a lot of people, especially depending on where you live. And like you said, living in the Pacific Northwest, there is a huge gun culture. But if you're not a part of it, you may not really even know it exists.
Especially like we live in a small town, but not like a rural town. It's like a small city almost. There's not like a bunch of farms and stuff around here. People live in the woods, but not the type, a different type of woods than there are, like you said, in the South. So working in the shipyard, you learned about the gun culture.
No, I just think it's like the difference. There's a fine line between people that like guns, have guns. And then there's like the extremeness,
Yeah.
And I think growing up, just you kind of assume, since you don't talk about it, you just kind of assume certain things. And like I always just thought it was like an extreme thing to do. It's like, I don't really need a gun. Like I get it, people have guns, but no one has a gun middle school, high school. They don't talk about it really, right?
Yeah.
Once you become an adult, you start to realize people do talk about it. I don't know. I'll probably get one, but I don't know.
Have you ever shot a gun before?
Yeah. My brother's a cop, so actually, funny story.
Okay.
Or he's in the prison now, but he was a cop. Little backstory on that is I have a little bit more insight on like the whole Minnesota thing because he was a cop in Minnesota.
Really?
So his actual career started in Minnesota as far as being a cop. So now he works in the prison in Seattle because he took a job offer, right? So he's pretty high up in the prison. So we're not really a cop anymore, but
more of an administrator, but he started there. Yeah.
So I have like a different viewing of like everything that's going on.
Here.
Yeah.
I didn't even know any of this when I asked him to be on.
Yeah. I try not to talk. I mean, I'll talk about it freely, obviously, but when you bring that up, I'm obviously not like 50-50 on the fence because obviously right and wrong is night and day, right?
Right.
But I do have like different views on police brutality than most people.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting because it's so hard with all the new flood of videos that come out. Like every other day now, there's a new video of some cop somewhere beating the fuck, if not killing somebody. There was somebody.
I personally see one every single day.
Yeah,
I see one every single day.
Time.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then, but to have somebody on the inside that has a different perspective like that, because people like to distill down like law enforcement, police brutality, because it's really hard to understand that even today with this general us versus them mentality, those are all still fucking people too. Mm-hmm. And they're not all the same fucking people.
No.
All of them have different
backgrounds, different,
and they all act differently. They all think differently. They all have different opinions on how their occupation is run and carried out. And, because they're so hamstrung by certain laws and all this stuff, they have to act certain ways here. And then there's this whole weird brotherhood thing that goes on. And then there's a union thing going. There's so many different layers to it. So it's really easy to try to distill it and make it simple and something that everybody can consume. But it's disingenuous to the argument that needs to be had because it is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have people around that have that different experience, that have a family member that has been in law enforcement or are in law enforcement, whatever, because they're going to offer a different perspective than what you're fucking reading about online.
Right.
Or what's showing up on social media. Because you're only going to get one person's perspective that way.
Yeah. So you said that you're likely to buy a gun?
Yeah, I mean, eventually. I'm in absolutely no rush, but eventually, I'm definitely not going to shy away from buying one.
Yeah. So when you had that conversation with Denzel, you weren't totally turned off to the idea of learning more about guns, obviously, and stuff like that?
They till this day, and they'll probably never ever like intrigue me to like actually have like a full blown conversation. But I'll have one just for the means of self protection. That's it. Like I don't get fascinated by that. I really don't.
Well, it's interesting because at that point you're looking at it about as base as it can be as a tool,
right?
That I may not necessarily need or want. Yeah. Not everybody needs a chainsaw, but if you want a chainsaw, you're going to feel like you need a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Sure. It's because there's a Second Amendment aspect to the argument, but then there's the practical matter of, okay, I can have a gun, but am I ever really going to feel comfortable using it if I needed to? And at that point, why the fuck do I even have it?
Yeah.
Unless it's essentially like a last line of defense thing. There's a spectrum of reasons why people get into it or choose not to. And it's totally okay. Either way you look at it. But you should come to that decision yourself after you've thought about it. You shouldn't be listening to nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody should tell you what to do when it comes to your rights like that. And if you choose that, like, hey, I'm just not going to actively participate in that one aspect of it, that's what America's all about.
Right. My mom had, similar to like your family, my mom had a gun in our house for like 15 years before I even knew that it was there. Like she never took it out shooting. She didn't. It was my grandpa's pistol when he was a cop in Eugene. And then when he died, she got it and she just had it ever since. And so I was, 16 or 17, I think, before I even knew that it was there. So it's there's a lot of people that I think do that same thing. They're not into the, when I was raised very similar, that we just weren't into guns. Like I said, I didn't even know that my mom had one. And then when I bought my gun. I was like, yeah, it's, you know, whatever. And I don't think I'm really into it. I think that's really weird. And then I started to get really, really, and I got very into the gun culture and like building and understanding. And like, I love to learn about things. I just love to learn, you know? And so I never knew before I started to buy guns that it was so complex.
Yeah.
It was so complicated. So to learn that was so fascinating to me. And so I'm not into, like, people get really nerdy into like ballistics and like stuff like that. And I'm not into any of that, but just like the way that they work, the functions of them, and like building them and stuff, I think is very interesting just because I had no idea that it was so complex.
I got into a little bit of that super nerdy side of it with the ballistics and all that, because when I started to get into hunting, like the ballistics of a particular caliber round was important to me. Because I'm not, you know, I wanted to, because I've only been hunting now like 2 years technically, right? And part of like one of the personal kind of like, thresholds I set for myself for actually becoming a hunter and actually doing it was I need to do it in the most, you know, quote unquote humane way possible. I'm not just going to try to go shoot at fucking something and then we'll see how it turns out. Yeah. You know, if I'm going to take the life of an animal, I want it to be quick, clean, and fast, as minimal pain as possible, you know, as ethical as possible. And so, okay, I was like, all right, so what kind of round would be best for this? What round flies the flattest, the longest, so I can take a longer shot or something and feel comfortable that it's going to hit where I want it to hit and all that good stuff. So I kind of came into that level of like the nerdiness part of it through like an ethical reasoning. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways you can get there. And some people, like my brother and stuff with the military background, he just kind of got into it because he was just interested in it, which is nice because if I have a question, I just tap that resource and check his info real quick and we're good to go. But there's a lot of different reasons why somebody may or may not be into gun culture, and how deep they dive into it can be, you know, there's a million different reasons to explain how or why they got to that point too. Yeah. How did we end up getting on gun culture so much?
I'm not sure, but there's just one last thing that I want to say about it that will lead us into something else that has to do with the conversation I had someone on social media this week. And it has to do with like context, right? Because I think the context is really important. And you kind of mentioned it when you thought, because of the way that you were raised, we were raised, that you used to kind of think that there's like, it was guns were simplistic to the point of like extremists, you know, and like just regular, like whatever. And I think that when you begin to learn that nuance and the context behind it, it's very, very important context for firearms themselves, you know, and for words, right? And this is how we'll kind of get into this, whatever, move on to another conversation. But I had a conversation with someone that we actually went to school with. Can you bleep this out for me? Can you write this down?
Let me just write it down. Go ahead.
Just for the... Right? You know, okay. So I love it. So I was talking to him, right? And I don't remember exactly what he said, but in the end it is, or somewhere in there talked about, you know, assuming that somebody was threatening because they had a firearm, right? And I was like, the rest of what you're saying I'm totally down with, like, it's like, but the one thing I have an issue with is you talking about someone being a threat, like because they're having a firearm. You know, I said, and that particular view of firearms themselves is, I think, partially a root cause of what leads to young black males specifically not being able to safely carry a firearm, right? That ideology of a firearm as a threat is the justification that police officers can use to shoot people who have guns, even if they're rightfully carrying them. And it's the only example I can come up with immediately is like Philando Castile, you know,
that's what I was gonna
right? Is legally concealed carrying, is trying to reach for the paperwork, is saying explicitly, I'm not pulling my gun, I'm not reaching for my gun, I'm not reaching for my gun, still get shot anyway. That cop can use the justification. We had a firearm, it's a threat. Yeah. You know? Yeah. That ideology, right? And I was very clear. So I'm not saying that you're racist, you're not, but that idea, that perception of the Second Amendment is extremely dangerous and continues this ideology that leads to more people being killed with that justification, you know? And so then it got at the end of the conversation where I stopped responding, right? He said, well, I guess I'm automatically going to be, it's logical to think that someone is more threatening because they have a firearm. And I said, but it's not. Exactly. I said, logic does not dictate threat when you see a firearm, right? Then it might be a poor example right now, but if you see someone your brother, right, who, if he's in uniform, you're not going to automatically assume that he's a threat because he's holding a gun, right? No. A police officer that you know is not a piece of shit, you're not going to assume is a threat because they're holding a firearm. A standard person, a fucking hunter, someone who's at a gun range, you're not going to assume they're a threat because they have a firearm, right? Mm-hmm. Context is extremely important. Caution, 1000% logical, because you don't know why they're carrying it. You don't know their experience with it. You don't know their state of mind. You don't know any of that. Caution is 1000% logical. A perception of threat is not logical, right? So his response is, well, I guess it depends on what you mean by threat. But it doesn't, because the word threat has a meaning, right? And he said, well, when I think of threat, I think I'm automatically going to assume or be more cautious of this person if I see them with a firearm. Mm-hmm. So I stopped responding, because you can't even explain your theory without changing the word that you're using, right? And I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm not trying to do anything. But if your idea is caution, that you're going to be more cautious, then the word you need to use is caution. Now you're going to assume threat. Yeah. Because to assume threat, I looked up the word, is to assume you're in immediate danger. To assume that person, this situation is going to cause you danger, right? I think it's very important. That is a very, very important distinction. Yeah. But I think to show caution to someone is 1000% logical. Very logical. Because there's so much you don't know. The context you don't know. Mm-hmm. But to automatically assume threat, I don't think is logical. And I think that that's an extremely dangerous ideology and thought process to be pushing forward. Because I think that, I think that's probably
a product of like the social stigma that guns have been labeled with over the last few decades. Yeah. I'm going to use my chainsaw analogy again. I walk out of my garage and I walk outside with my fucking chainsaw, and there's a lot of people that just go walking and running on this street out here. And if I walk out there and happen to see somebody I know and we start bullshitting, are they going to be like, what the fuck are you doing with that chainsaw, dude? Where's the tree? What are you doing? You're not a logger. And so they're gonna act differently now, because there is something there that can be dangerous. Potentially. And it doesn't seem to fit in whatever context they think they're walking into in that particular situation. I will personally confess to, and I'm a big gun advocate. I have a couple guns. I'm looking at getting more. We're in the process of building guns, all that good stuff. I have somebody that I work with that before the protest started and all this stuff, it was kind of like, once he had reached a certain point during the shutdown period where he started to feel kind of uncomfortable being out and about with all these people getting weird. There's a lot of social stigma and people yelling at people for not wearing a fucking mask or, whatever it is. So he started to carry his pistol on his hip at the office. Stuff like this. There's technically nothing wrong with that, as long as it's okay with whoever owns the building or your company policy, whatever the fuck, right?
Open carry state.
And it was weird, even for me, for a couple days. Still doing it right now. Yeah. Nobody thinks twice about it. So it makes me wonder if we didn't have this social stigma about 100%. Open carrying. And let's say you weren't allowed to conceal carry. Everybody had to open carry in the state, period. If you want to carry a gun, you better be showing that thing. I wonder if the social stigma would be different, because there would be a lot more people having regular interactions with people, including cops, that are regularly carrying firearms. That's a slight justification of that in an armed society is a polite society. But I think there's got to be something slightly truthful to that. Yeah. And having that kind of like that stigma that if you're carrying a gun there, that person now becomes a threat at some point. It's like you said, it's dangerous for one. And especially when you're talking law enforcement, because they're on edge usually as it is. And if they see a firearm right there, they might be pushed to the brink and go over the top, and then they're going to do some stupid shit, and next thing you know, somebody gets fucking murdered.
Right, which is unfortunate because it is in my view, it's the police officer's job to do their best to de-escalate the situation to the point that they until it is there is no longer a possibility.
Yeah.
But that's like another. So does this conversation I had with our old schoolmate, does that make sense to you, like what I was saying?
No, it makes sense, but no, I agree.
What are your thoughts?
I'd be lying if I said I agree entirely, because just tapped into like the roots of my soul, I know me personally having that causes more of a threat. It does not matter in what case scenario, it does bring more eyes. And I'm not going to say it's a flawed system, but the system is going down because you have these threat levels that get amplified due to like school shootings or anything like that, anything that's even remotely like that. Even just like the thing what happened on July 3rd last year, with that, like that minor thing right there, right?
Chief stick.
Just just minor things like that, and it's the whole argument is like, all right, does everyone need a firearm or does everyone need to get their firearms taken away? I definitely don't think everyone should get them taken away. It's all right before that. Times do change though, so it brings up arguments like, at what point, should we rewrite the Constitution? I don't think you should, but
that is why the amendment process exists, though.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's always an open possibility.
But then it goes full circle, and it's like, all right, well, someone has to have guns, because if X and Y across the water comes and attacks us, then who's going to defend us? Then you got the police in.
Walks right in.
Yeah, then you got the police in, and then you got all this other stuff. It's like, all right, well, the police can't be the only people that have the guns, because what if they go corrupt? Mm-hmm. So it's a constant conversation. I think everyone should have guns, though.
Let me steelman that a little bit and say, okay, well, we have law enforcement.
Yeah.
We have National Guard, who obviously we know can be turned out in a very short time. And we have the actual military to protect us.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do the citizens need guns at that point?
I don't trust the government.
That's what it boils down to.
My particular right. So
I tried to steelman it a little bit.
I'm pretty sure our next episode, Josh Keaton is going to be on here.
Okay.
And so Josh Keaton, he's been away at school for several years now, so I'm sure he's going to.
Where's he going to school? Local or out of state?
No, I think he went to Wazoo because he's in.
I want to say he's in Shibuya. I'm pretty sure I saw that guy like last week.
Josh Keaton. I know that he's back here right now, but he's living in fucking. Not here.
Not here? Okay.
Yeah, Eastern Washington. He was going to school there.
Okay.
And then
it's like, did he come back a cowboy? Happens to a lot of people go to that school.
And then he was being like a working in a nursing home.
Oh, okay.
So
he's a fucking saint then.
Josh Keaton's a great guy. Yeah.
I can't believe people that do that for a living, man.
Yeah, I don't remember why I brought that. Oh, because I've been talking to him and he told me that he was going to press me deeply about my views on the Second Amendment and why I was at that. But
well, it's good. It's good.
Well, I think it's very important, and that's one of the reasons that we talked before. But I got this, and then I never thought that I would AR, and I bought an AR like 6-9 months ago when they first started talking about like doing assault. I was like, nope, no, I don't trust that. And then when the coronavirus stuff happened and people are getting weird, I don't trust that, and as bad as the actors are, I'm not painting any group of anybody in any type of way except for the people who did bad shit. When I'm seeing videos of people in neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. going into people's homes, fuck that. Yeah. My son is in my home. My wife is in my home. I don't care about the things in my home, my items. I care about shit because I've worked very, very hard for everything that I have.
Yeah.
I did not come from extreme means of, right, but I'm not going to kill someone over my TV because I don't care, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you're coming in here for my TV or for my fucking kid, and I'm not going to take that fucking chance. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to take that chance. And so, I don't know, and just to think that it's different from one person, that if I'm like, I know that it's just one dude, I feel very comfortable with the pistol that I have in the box next to my bed, that I'm like, this is fine, when you're seeing fucking hordes of people running through neighborhoods looking for goddamn supplies, the woman on the Commentary Magazine said that she's literally seen groups of people in cars. This woman who's on the Commentary Magazine podcast, it's a conservative magazine out of New York. This woman lives, out of New York, and she lives in Washington, D.C. in one of the outside neighborhoods. And she was talking about literally carloads of people coming through the neighborhood, going to people's houses. And like like I'm not saying it's the protesters are not painting in groups of people, but you're talking about literal groups of people in a matter of a week, you know what I'm saying? Shit deteriorates to the point that there are groups of people going to people's neighborhoods and homes to do whatever the fuck they're doing.
And this was like at the
I don't want a pistol.
The
I don't want that.
And destruction
you know?
stage too. And so there were these like rogue groups of people that were going to just start shit wherever they went.
And that's from my home, right? And then on the flip side of that, when I'm seeing legitimate peaceful protests that are getting tear gassed and beat the fuck down instantaneously, that's that other shit. Because that shit doesn't happen, and I'll defend this to anybody, right? That shit doesn't happen when you have an AR-15 in your hand.
For sure.
The cops don't fucking beat you down when you have a goddamn rifle in your hand. That shit doesn't happen. Why do you think the first thing that they do in the city, all weapons are banned from the protest? Nobody can have anything, but the cops still get to have batons and shields. And I don't, for sure it's the cops' job to keep order, but you got me fucked up if you think the first thing you're doing is taking away my right to protect myself when we're here to protest police brutality, someone being murdered by a police officer. The last thing that you're going to do is take away my right to defend myself. And that's
the Second Amendment exists to protect the First, right?
You know what I'm saying?
The government is saying that, you can go protest. Here's your permit, but you can't bring guns.
And I'm not.
Wait. So I get to exercise my First, but not Second. Come again?
Yeah.
Explain that one to me. Mayor Jenny fucking Durkin.
I've had a really hard time with people making those comparisons between like, oh, you're fucking protesting to get your haircut one week, but then you're not cool with this shit that other week, or like the police didn't beat down these people in Michigan when they had their AR-15s, but they're beating down these people. And that seems like too simple of a line for you to be jumping immediately over. They had goddamn rifles in their hands. Oh, who cares? The stupid fucking thing half of them are there to protest. Yeah, because people really did have signs about haircuts. Some people are really pissed off that they're not allowed to go to work, you know? I'm not talking about the reason that they're there. I'm talking about your presence expressing your Second Amendment right makes it really, really hard to make you be quiet and force you to get the fuck down and shut the fuck up. And I just don't understand the disconnection with that, but I think it's this part of the same thing you're talking about. The social stigma of an AR-15 is just to kill people. It's just for school shootings. It's just to kill a bunch of people, you know? And that's, I think that we're seeing right now exactly why that exists. It's because if CHAZ is immediately more serious when they have armed guards. Now it's a concern. Now that people are there to openly express their Second Amendment rights, now we need to take it seriously, right? I think that's ridiculous. I think that it's ridiculous.
I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced when we talk about CHAZ.
I'm saying that people are immediately like more, you know,
you'll now have national media attention.
I think that it's ridiculous, you know, and it's because there is not, in my opinion,
there's not a justified reason.
I don't want to make too harsh of a statement, but there's, I think, a skewed perception of the Second Amendment at its core that leads to that type of thinking. And I think that's a serious problem. And I think it's I think it's taken away people's power to protest and try and get a goddamn message across. You know, there's
I get that.
A difference in the 60s where, you know, if Martin Luther King and all his homeboys tried to show up with guns, the shit would have been way different. It would not have gone down. I'm not saying in their favor. I mean that the police would have shot them. Like it was a different time. They didn't have the same opportunity then that you have now.
Yeah,
we are at a time now where when Philando Castile died, the entire Second Amendment community said this is wrong. Said even people who before were like Blue Lives Matter said this is wrong. This man is expressing his Second Amendment right, and this is wrong. We are living in a time where it doesn't matter anymore. The Second Amendment community does not see color, right? And that's a stupid thing to say, but they're like, as base as it sounds, they don't care what color you are. It's the Second Amendment. They are down for everybody. So it doesn't matter what the cause is. If you're there and you're peacefully protesting with your Second Amendment right, they're going to support you, even if they don't like your cause, because you're there with the Second Amendment. Yep. In the 60s, it wasn't like that. You didn't have that same thing. The NRA, Dave Chappelle talked about it. When the Black Panthers showed up at the courthouse in LA, the NRA then protested against assault weapons because the Black Panthers showed up with them in LA, right? Yeah. Shit's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore. And it concerns me that that's not, except that's a line that's being totally missed by people. It's just not even clicking that it's different. What
was that? Is it the John Brown Gun Club? that showed up at the CHAZ.
Yeah.
You know, and that is essentially a group of African American Second Amendment enthusiasts.
Right.
With you know, they have some fringe elements going on there too, but overall,
yeah,
you know, because they showed up at CHAZ, and that's.
So the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
and just for you else, because you didn't really know much about this, right?
Yeah.
CHAZ. So it is like a 6-block,
for now,
section of Seattle that, you know, however it came across, because there's reports that the protesters did it and that like random people did it, or that like, I have no idea. Either way, right?
First of all, it's Capitol Hill.
It got barricaded off, right? It's a weird area. So there's 6 blocks or so that's blocked off.
It's a wild area.
That
I love
has
that
been
place.
labeled the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And so people are there, and there's conflicting reports all over the board. And so we're, I think, just going to really try and share the shit that we can like validate, you know, because
thank God it's 2020 and there's people that are doing like live feeds as they walk through.
In
and
the very beginning, there's like all kinds
weird
of
stuff,
bad claims about it and stuff. And one of them that I want to address immediately is
try to show you a map of it on Twitter.
So there's armed guards at some of the exits. They're armed guards,
each
right?
of the barricades,
and I don't think that it's all of them. I think it's just some of them. But it is a group, the John Brown Gun Club, that is. I mean, it's a Second Amendment group that they're there and they're to protect the encampment, right? I'm not opposed to this at all. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I've been really adamant about that on social media. I'm only saying that because I've been really adamant about ensuring the understanding of armed people there, because there is media companies as big as CNN trying to say that no one is carrying guns in there. Yeah. And I think that that's wrong, right? I said I don't think there's a problem with it, because I'm an advocate for people peacefully expressing their Second Amendment rights, whether it's at the CHAZ or it's at the protests in Michigan. I don't give a shit. If you're being cool about it, I'm down, you know, and so I'm not opposed to it, but I want to ensure that that shit is happening. We've seen it. We have seen it on social media. The same thing that everyone is saying, oh, don't believe the media. Look on social media to get the truth about CHAZ. We have seen the John Brown Gun Club there at the CHAZ. Totally fine. But let's just be fucking honest about it, right? And in the first couple of days, there was also reports of extortion.
A couple of John Brown Gun Club members right there.
At the CHAZ. Yeah. Which
they're almost
totally
like book boys.
Fine. Right. It's, They're
almost like book boys. They got a full tactical setup, man. They're ready to go.
Open carry is totally legal in Washington State.
Yeah.
Good to go, right? So no problems. I'm fine, right? I just want to just be honest that this is happening there, right? I think it legitimizes them a little bit. It makes you look more serious now, that you need to be taken more seriously, rather than random people pulling AR-15s out of the back of fucking police vehicles for them to be immediately taken. You know what I'm saying? A guy who's obviously never held a rifle before in his hands, who's just like, oh, I got this shit, because it's taken away in 5 seconds by a random guy, right?
Did you see that video?
Oh, yeah, the guy that crashed the car. Right?
Yeah.
Came right up on. He was a security guard for Q13.
And he
comes up on. I'm going to take that, sir. Thank you.
He recovered both those rifles that day. There was 2 AR-15s taken from cop cars on that first day of Seattle protests, and that security guard for Q13 got them both back. Because in that video where he got the second one, he had another one like slung on his back, and that was the other one that had already been taken.
Wow.
He had already got back. Yeah,
it was wild.
He's
he just drops it, unloads the magazine, and then just like
military veteran, and like refused to even have his name put out. Like no one even knows who it was. He was like, I don't even want. He was like, no, it's totally just my job.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of cool stuff that like little anecdotal, situations that have unfolded, especially in Seattle over the last couple of weeks. They're like, man, there's a lot of good fucking people out there.
Yeah,
it should bolster people's hopes in humanity at that point, even for those crazy Second Amendment folks that are carrying guns in the city.
Yeah.
It's like, man, a lot of people are good people.
And so there was also reports of extortion when the CHAZ first went up, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of confusion about this because of like some weird statements that have come out from 2 different people. Mm-hmm. And the first day that they started talking about extortion, I don't remember the police officer's name, because she's not Carmen Best. She's not the police chief. She's one of the lieutenants. She was saying they were receiving stories, not formal reports, but police officers were being told that businesses and individuals were being extorted for entrance fees and to maintain business within the autonomous zone, right? Okay. And so then, like 2 days later, Carmen Best, the police chief in Seattle, clarifies. She says, "We have not received formal reports of extortion in the autonomous zone, but if that is happening, we would like people to report the extortion." Mm-hmm. Do you want another beer?
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm chilling.
We have more beers down there if you want them. Just sorry.
They're still relatively cool.
Yeah, I just noticed. So
that's next.
And so immediately after she said that, even people that I know are like, "Oh my God, she just walked back what the police department said that, there's no extortion. This isn't going on. They've been lying." And so I'm like, that's not. And it's important. The verbiage is important, just like the conversation with our schoolmate, especially in politics and public statements. The verbiage is very, very important, right? Yeah. And that's why she said, "We have not received formal complaints or reports of extortion within the autonomous zone." And that's exactly why the first officer didn't say, "We've received reports of," you know what I'm saying? They haven't received formal reports. She said, "We've received anecdotal stories of extortion within the autonomous zone." Yeah. And I'm not trying to say that this is evidence that it is happening. What I'm trying to say is that it's not evidence that it's not happening. We still don't know, because I've seen arguments. Yeah. I've seen stories from local news companies, from people being interviewed who live inside of the autonomous zone, that they're happy about what's going on and that they're not happy about what's going on. So
I'm to Capitol Hill.
Right. So I'm not trying to argue either way, but what I'm saying is there is not conclusive evidence either way, because even if you try and go from standard media to social media, you got people saying either way that there's extortion happening at the gates and that's not happening. No one would ever do that here. That's not even possible. Yeah. So, I'm not saying that it is happening for sure, but I know that there are certainly reports on social media, if that's the only thing that we can believe, of extortion happening in the autonomous zone for at least some businesses and individuals.
So I think we should step back for a second to kind of talk about how it came about, right? And the importance of that police precinct that they essentially occupied, and then the autonomous zone kind of got established around that, right? Because that was
East Precinct.
Yeah, the East Precinct of the Seattle Police Department. I think it was on Monday this past week, right, where they essentially had made the decision to abandon the precinct. The police department, along with the mayor, Jenny Durkin, had decided that, okay, it's time to grab everything in there, board it up, and let's get out, because the protest is building, and they're going to try to, they were afraid of a conflict at the police precinct. Yeah. And so they just, to essentially neutralize the possibility of a threat, just back out. Then all you have to deal with possible property damage.
And left. Yeah. They kind of all the officers took their personal stuff, and then they put plywood and stuff in the windows and put some fencing around it, and then they just left.
Yeah. And so that's when
the autonomous zone was erected around this police precinct, and they left partially because there are houses and businesses connected to the precinct. It's like on a corner. Mm-hmm. And so on the back of it, there's houses and there's businesses. There's like 500 residences inside of the outdoor zone.
So they'd be outnumbered
if it starts to burn down, if they get in there, a fire gets started, like the church caught on fire. There's been fires, I'm not blaming malicious anything, but if a fire gets started in there, people are going to die, businesses are going to burn, houses are going to burn. And so the cops are like, we're just not even going to, we're just going to board it up, and we're not even going to
avoid collateral damage at that point. Yeah. And innocents getting caught up in whatever is going on outside.
And I also want to mention, as we're going through the story, that same day that's happening, there are reports from protesters on the ground that the Proud Boys, a far-right extremist group,
formerly created by Gavin McGinnis.
Who, we talked about this a little bit before. And so he separated himself because they were getting racist and extremist. He's like, that's not why I started this. And so there are reports from the protesters on the ground, like, we saw the Proud Boys in their cars loading up guns. They're going to come here. They're going to attack. So that's also part of the justification for the John Brown Gun Club showing up.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's important to say the Proud Boys never showed up. Mm-mm. No one ever saw them.
Okay.
So there's reports of them loading magazines in AR-15s in cars, but they never showed up. Right? So
So this rapper Raz.
Raz Simone.
Yeah.
I
So
saw that.
Did you know of him before this happened?
Yeah, definitely.
He's like a big in the local
prominent.
scene. Yeah.
So where does he fit into that? Because I've heard conflicting stories. Like he was like the first one to kind of come in with an armed group to kind of make sure everybody just calms the fuck down.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. He's not affiliated with the John Brown Gun Club, is he?
I don't believe so, and I don't.
It was
know,
hard for me to try to find a connection between the two.
and I don't know whether or not he's like one of the formal leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement. I know, like, I would assume, at least at this point, he's affiliated, but I don't know whether or not he's like one of the leaders. You know, there's part of the leadership style of Black Lives Matter is similar to, I'm not comparing the groups, but similar to Antifa in like a horizontally organized leadership system that there's
dispersed,
not. Yeah, there's
dispersed affiliation.
Yeah, there's not one individual leader. It's a series of people that are all like at the top of different groups working for like one collective idea, you know, and Antifa is again, I'm not comparing the ideology of the group, just the construction. It runs very similarly that in order to avoid a fucking government killing like happened to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, dispersing the responsibilities so you can't pick one figurehead to try and end this, which I was thinking about this morning, right? I was watching a documentary called The 13th on Netflix. Have you seen this?
I haven't seen it yet.
It's
in my queue.
Yeah, it's about the prison system and stuff like that.
They're playing that on repeat in the CHAZ, by the way.
Right. And so one of the things...
I just love that name, the CHAZ. Sounds
Jones.
so Seattle.
Van Jones was one of the people in that documentary, and so he was talking about that idea, and that was one thing he thought was good about the Black Lives Matter movement, was that couldn't happen. It stopped them from being able to try and cut the movement off from taking out the leader, you know? And I thought that was interesting because one of the ideas or thoughts that I've had is I think, and I have to think more about it now, is I've thought that it harms the movement to not have one singular voice leading it, to have one person to be able to discuss ideas and like move forward with. So, and I've discussed that with Josh Keaton, you know, that like we were thinking about that it's potentially harmful to have numerous different people expressing a similar but also slightly different idea, you know, because a lot of the people, at least one day in particular that I was watching last week when we were recording, they had like 4 or 5 different leaders from Black Lives Matter that were being interviewed on this show. And they were all from different groups that were doing something similar, but going about it in a different way, right? So one of them, I think, was called Project Zero. And they were working on like data-based solutions to like systemic racism, right? And so that's like their thing was data-based in particular. And so all of the same or similar goal with different ways of going about it, you know, which I don't think is an inherently bad thing to be going about it a different way, you know.
Well, let's talk about that idea for a second, because right when, you know, the whole thing was starting to pop on Saturday, and I think I spent that night trying to record something to get some thoughts out there, and I had expressed concern, which I ended up not releasing, obviously, but I expressed concern in this idea that without a singular message, or a singular leader that can create that singular message, right? The movement essentially has a greater chance of just kind of disappearing, dissolving, just because there's not this giant force behind it driving at that one goal. Now, I wonder the validity of that. You know, is it more important to have a dispersed movement, or is it more important to have a more singularly focused movement?
What do you think about that?
Thoughts?
Is this something you've thought about before?
No, it's not something I thought about. I think,
because just what you were saying right now, it just kind of made me think about that. I'm like, I think we should talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Pluses, minuses, pros, cons.
I only ask you if you thought about it before, just so everyone knows that, like, it's okay to be thinking aloud, you know? So you're not pinned down to anything you're saying now. No one needs to come at you and be like, well, you fucking said this on the podcast.
No, I'm pretty sure.
You're thinking out loud, so it's, you know.
My initial thoughts probably could be, like, always my, like, main thought on it is, I think it's just different times. I think back then when media wasn't as easy accessible, it was easier to have one person. You know, you kind of needed that one person. You couldn't have 10 different Martin Luther Kings.
Yeah.
You know, because like there's different movements, right? Because there was Martin Luther King, there was Malcolm X, and there was like the Rosa Parks of the world. But those are the names you remember. You don't remember all the other names, and it's kind of better, I think, that they don't have names or anything like that. I just think it's too big to have just that one person that's leading all of it.
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable at this point. I don't think there is a way to have that one person that's leading a whole movement.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there's validity to that because, just to use Malcolm X as an example, right? One of the things I learned was he was constantly traveling around the country to establish different churches, you know, to convert them to this ideology for them to be preaching that same message. Mm-hmm. And it's not like they couldn't send the other people, and that's why Malcolm X was constantly traveling, is because he was the one that delivered the message the best, most clearly, in the perfect amount of time, in the most beautiful way, you know? And so I think it was harder to spread that video clip of him, you know, around the United States, whereas you can have one person just at a rally videoing this entire speech from one person, then everyone can see it. You know, that dude doesn't have to travel all around I think that's very interesting.
So at this point, maybe the message is so broadly appealing that you don't necessarily require one voice. And especially because it's 2020 now, we have social media. So one singular leader doesn't have to go from state to state to state to city to city to city to try to spread that message, because it's not going to make it in the newspapers and it's not going to show up on broadcast television that night, because it's the fucking 60s and that stuff doesn't exist. But nowadays, one person with a live feed, done.
Yeah.
But I still feel like the pro in my mind is that you can get the entire fucking world on board, because it is at this point. The entire world. We're seeing protests in great numbers all across the globe in different cities, mostly westernized cities, but you know, that kind of comes with the Western culture.
Right.
But at the same time, if everybody gets out there, it makes a fuck ton of noise. If there's not a single leader or a small group of individuals that can essentially bring those concerns up to the level where legislation is required, laws are written, regulations are changed or updated, or so on and so forth. At this point, are we just all taking a chance that protesting and screaming loud enough wakes up our our betters up in the elite politician realm to try to do what we want them to do? Well, so I kind of feel like there might be some pluses that it has a greater attention, but is the ultimate goal now a little bit more hazy because there's so many voices?
And I think there's definitely something to that I'm so glad you said that, as far as clarity of the message goes, because it's on social media and it's so widely appealing and people are down for the general. I think the most base thing you could boil it down to is like everybody at this point, regardless of whether they're out there or they're just at home not saying anything or they're whatever. Like, I think at the base, we can all agree there's a fucking problem with police brutality in this country. And regardless of why you are out there, everyone can agree with that, right? Because there's some people that are there. I'm here to take down capitalism, right? I'm here to change some laws. I'm here to do this. So there's people there for different goals. But in the long run, it's one thing we can all agree on, right? But
so as part of the longer it goes, the more voices intake, the clearer the big picture becomes.
And I think that it's becoming, like you said, very unclear because so many people are able to talk and express their individual message. You know, if you're not saying this particular thing, then you're not saying the right thing. You know, and we even have people like our friend that. We said the same thing we just said, that no, we stand for equality for all people. We always have. We are here to defend what is good, as we have always been. That's not good enough, you know. Yeah. And that's an example for one person, but she's not the only one. You know, that person's not the only one in the United States that would make that same argument. There's thousands of people that would say that same thing to us for different reasons. You know, even though the end goal we share is the exact same.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't even think. Okay, and this,
you know, and that's what concerns me. With all this, right? That's one of my big concerns is that people are not able to, maybe just because it's right now and it's so emotional, right? But people are not able to have like a simplistic, I feel in a lot of cases, a simplistically agreeing message without being very specific. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, see, now I'm going to contradict myself because I don't think that there is a simplistic solution. Like, I don't think this ends.
Not solution, but expression.
This doesn't end at police brutality.
Yeah.
That police brutality is a symptom of what is fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Period. And I think it goes way, way deeper down to the actual social level, the education level, everything. So at that point, can you even paint a target on the actual problem?
Yeah. So I'm trying to actually.
Yep.
So I think all right, so where it kind of gets like filtered and watered down is the issue is you have to address everything only one thing at a time. And like if you literally just hashtag like one thing at a time, that's really that's the only way it'll actually work. If you just address everything one step at a time, because
like a stepped process.
Yeah, there has to be a step process. You can't hit everything at once because it's one thing. If everything like kind of opens up and you want to hit everything all at once, only certain things are going to go through, you know? But if you focus on one thing, get that thing to go through, all right, cool, we did our job with that. Let's move on to something else. Exactly. So as far as like Black Lives Matter movement, which I honestly thought it never had the best name. I thought it should always just be Black Lives Matter as well or also. Because you got the people that just look at it. There's two different ways to interpret it, right? Yeah. There's the reasonable way, and then there's the way of, oh, Black Lives Matter.
Trigger
what?
Culture.
That's it? Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how you get the all lives matter.
Exactly.
And then you have reasonable people saying stupid shit.
Exactly.
You know, when I got fucking family members saying shit like that. That's like, I know because I'm your family member at your core.
Exactly.
You're not a fucking idiot. You're just getting so pissed off.
Interpreting it completely wrong. So
I'm so glad you said that. I think
never had the best. No, the name's awful, I think, but fuck it, we're already here.
Though.
Yeah, we're already here.
Find something that's broad enough to capture everybody.
Reconstruct the police. You know, that's all it is.
There's 1,000 better ways.
Which is why it's so fucking important to talk about it.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree. I think but you just have to focus. Because I bring my brother back into this, right? So since the whole police thing, like, I think Black Lives Matter, attack that whenever, if ever, that ever actually does work, right? In racism, in police brutality. Those two things you wouldn't imagine shouldn't be that hard, right? For however long as it takes. And then you move on to the next thing. If we could protest, I say 2 months per issue for the rest of our lives, imagine what would actually get done, what will actually get accomplished, you know?
Yeah.
But damn it, that's a perfect world, though.
So that being said, what do you think is the first? What do you think is the first step in this process? Do you think that it is the message of Black Lives Matter? Do you think that it is police brutality in general? Do you think that? Because I'll give you a second to think, right? Because
on the spot for a second.
Yeah, so I'll give you a right.
And again,
the reason I say that is because sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, disclaimer again, most of what we do on this podcast is think out loud.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be married to whatever you say right off the bat.
The reason I ask you that is almost to clarify what I said earlier, right? So last time I was here, I think it's going to take weeks for us to really boil down what we've been talking about. But I've been talking to my wife, obviously, every day about what's going on. And I have been consistently talking to my mom, anybody who's fucking asked me about it, you know, that I believe, at the risk of taking heat on the internet, that there is a larger picture here and a larger discussion about what's going on in this country in regards to the militarization of the police, in regards to the dissolving of the Fourth Amendment, in regards to the dissolving of the Second Amendment, in regards to the dissolving of the First Amendment, people's rights being taken away in general, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of this
taken away or infringed upon,
chiseled at, whatever word you want to use. Taken away is probably too extreme. Infringed upon is probably the best way. And I think that this movement that's going on, and the black community have been an extremely easy target for these things for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very easy to get lost, especially right now, especially after something like the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, a series of events like this. I think it's extremely easy for that to be the focal point of what's going on. But I think that there is a larger discussion that is not to brush over this discussion, right? But a larger discussion of this is happening to the black community, or has for so long, because it's been easy. Because they've been able, politicians, whoever you want to attribute the they to, right, have been able to enshrine things a lot to make it simple. Because in the beginning they were slaves, and we can just do this whole time, right? Testing things out to the point that you're now talking about, like we did the last time, the coronavirus happens and the governor is using people's cell phone signals, their GPS signals, to find out who is home and who is not. Yeah. Right? Something so simple as this, right? Tested out for, what am I talking about? Having to stay at home instead of being in jail. No. Like if you, instead of going to jail, home monitoring. What the fuck is that called? House arrest. Thank you. Right? Yeah. House arrest. Having literal GPS signals on people to know where they're at all the time, to know whether or not you're doing the right thing that we want you to be doing.
Fuck, I have never put those two things together before.
Beginning here at people that in the 60s people didn't give a fuck because white people were racist. Before that, people didn't give a fuck because white people were racist. And shit could happen to black people, and it could be brushed over by the media and by whoever, and it didn't matter, you know? And because it's been happening for so long, it's easy and right to be upset about this. But there's a larger discussion of if it's happening to this group of people that's been so easy to exploit for so long, it is happening to fucking everybody. And it's something that has to be stopped now, before it happens to everybody. And it doesn't, I'm not saying that it's like, oh, now's the time, if it's, you know, but it's, if it can happen to one person, it can happen to everybody. And it's not going to stop here. You know, we've seen it's not going to stop here. We've seen fucking Duncan Lemp get shot through the door of his house. So you got to remember what his name was. I was telling Jordan about it all week. There's a video of a guy in the hallway of a hotel where something is happening. The police are, the police are yelling different directions at him because they can't figure out what the fuck they want him to do. And he ends up getting shot in the goddamn face. Yep. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, and I'm not saying like, oh, it's all lives matter. The color doesn't matter. I am talking about literal rights being infringed upon. You are an innocent man, regardless of your color, trying to do the right thing, trying to escape from a potentially dangerous scenario, and the fucking police shoot you in the face because they can't give you consistent directions. This is not about color. No. This people are being murdered by a protective. There are larger problems here, man. So and it's concerning. Almost like if you fix the police brutality problem, you fix the racist police brutality problem. And so, is that I say that because I think that there's validity to what Elijah is saying in working in steps, right? Because you can't tackle the First, Second, and Fourth Amendment all at the same time. That's way too big of a problem to be like, we need to make sure that we secure all these things at one time. There's not one thing, even a law or another amendment that you could ratify to secure all three at the same time. Can't do it. Has to be done in steps, right? That, I think, at that point, once we acknowledge that, and I'm thinking out loud here because I never thought about what he said before about it having to be done in steps, right? But if this is the problem I'm seeing, all these things, they've got to be done one piece at a time, right? Which one's the most important? If you ask me, because we're seeing people getting tear gas in the street and shot in the face with rubber bullets, it's the Second Amendment. Journalists you secure that bitch. You secure that bitch because it's number two when the first doesn't work. Okay. If I have to answer now, that's what I would say, right? And maybe police brutality is the right thing to do. Maybe it's race relations, whatever the name we put on it last week, whatever. I don't know, but there's something larger here at work. Why I think people get so passionate about it. And I think it's being distracted easily, like I said, from history, from the media, from academia, from social justice, from everybody. There's anybody who is trying to use this event, these protests, these riots, whatever the fuck you want to call them, to their advantage to take away from the larger message of the Bill of Rights being eroded piece by piece.
regulation by regulation by regulation.
And that is not me saying this doesn't matter. This matters. This issue that there are numbers you cannot deny as far as prison goes, wealth. There's all kinds of things you cannot deny, right? I'm not here to deny systemic, whatever the fuck. You know, we talked about earlier, we live in an area where that doesn't really happen that much, you know?
Right.
So I know that I can say for sure that it is not in every corner of the United States, because in this corner of the United States, it doesn't really happen here. You know, I can safely say that, but I would never say it doesn't exist, because that's an ignorant thing to say. But
did I ever tell you when I was taking some college classes online a few years ago, I think before we started this.
When you were working at Bennick, I remember that.
Yeah. And I had done a history project on like a local, I don't remember exactly what topic was or something like that, but through my research at the time, I discovered this problem with Seattle around the 60s era when everything was clearly segregated, right?
Redlining and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to this day, there are still ancestral lease documents, right?
Right, old
that
deeds
are
and stuff.
that people still. I mean, you get a packet of fucking 20 pages. The font's this fucking big, so nobody's reading it. But if you were to look at that, you'll see language in there to this day that I'm just saying that nobody probably assumes is there because nobody's actually read the fucking contract.
Right. I'm not saying it didn't. Right. I would never.
But it's wild how it's still those hanger-ons from an era long past still exist today that you could still find and see. Now, touch on systemic fill in the blank. Systemic racism, systemic whatever the fuck, oppression. I have a problem with the word being used systemic.
Yeah.
Because systemic means that legally, regulatorily, there is something in black and white that you can be held legally in a court of law that says this is illegal. So that would be a systemic oppression. Jim Crow laws, systemically racist, right?
Right.
It is illegal now in the United States to have any law or regulation on the books that is systemically racist. But that aside, I think that's kind of a technicality, a kind of loophole that people use to say, well, we're not systemically racist, right? We're not.
They're reverberations from said system.
Yes, which societally have become systemic.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I think, is the most important problem because you can't write it out in the law because it's already fucking illegal.
Yeah.
But the problem is to get people to act on that and to think that way is a lot harder than just striking a law or striking a regulation.
Yeah.
And then you're having to deal with like older generations passing on their fucking hatred and so on and so forth down through the generations to end up to people that we have today that they're incredibly racist, but for no fucking reason other than that's what they heard from their parents and their grandparents, so on and so forth. And their minds just haven't opened up. Joe Rogan had on, I can't remember his name. Is it Daryl Davis? The guy that has basically spent a living playing blues music, and converting
white supremacists,
the actual fucking, was it the Grand Dragon at some era of a fucking KKK?
Yeah,
having them turn in their fucking robes and be like, dude, you've brought me around to this because I'm now realizing after just having a single conversation at a bar with this guy, starting this relationship over a period of years that made him realize that you're just a regular dude. And you're smarter than me.
Yeah.
And if my fucking bullshit racist ideology relies on you being inferior and, less than me, you've literally proven to me by just sitting here talking to me like a goddamn human that my racism is misplaced.
Yeah.
And he's converted a ridiculous amount. I got to get that fucking book, by the way. But it's just, I feel like one of the major problems here, because there's a billion problems about how to fix this, which is, I think, why it's global, because it speaks to a deeper truth that we all know is fucking wrong and needs to change, but we don't know, like you said, where to start, how to start, and what really to do, because it is so deeply rooted.
Yeah.
And where do you attack? How do you get down to the actual cancer itself that's causing us to lose the arm? You know what I mean?
Well,
where you at?
Man. Yeah, man. All right.
I've been seeing you think. I've been seeing you think. I should have given you some paper before.
No, you're good. You're good.
I didn't even think about it. We need to have a guest notebook for them to write things down.
There you go.
That's part of why I have paper, so that if I'm like
the real problem is we bounce around so fucking much. It makes it hard sometimes.
It was easy to keep up with though. It's all interesting. It's all relevant. I think.
I'm real happy you're here, man. Real happy.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad I'm here too, man. Thank you. I'll drink to that too. Fuck it.
Yeah, well, we are definitely going to talk about music pretty soon. I swear to God.
For sure.
I cannot believe this is. That's how you know it's good, is because we had no idea.
Some real shit going on though.
It's been a hard 2 weeks for fucking everybody.
Yeah,
whether you're directly affected or not. Like I'm talking to friends and family and stuff that are having massive problems now at home.
Yeah,
just talking to their significant others and shit. It's like. That speaks to the problem.
Yeah. All right. So where you at?
So I think the whole BLM movement, I think the roots of it is racism. I think that's what it's really supposed to be, is like, how do we get rid of racism? Now, if you ask me what's the easier thing and what's the more, not gonna say bigger picture, because the biggest thing would be to end racism, right? Across the board, from race to race and color to color.
Like the more productive
that would make
plan.
The overall cloud of it is, right, eliminate threat. Really, that's the main word here, right?
People to be happy.
Yeah, just be happy. If I see Winnie the Pooh right there and I think, oh, yellow is a threat to me, how do I change my mind about that, right? So that moves into police brutality, I think. And as far as that goes, that's always been an ongoing thing. But it also comes back into the word threat. Why do you see this as a threat? Why do you... X, Y, and Z. How do we train that? How do we how do we readdress these things?
Reconfigure it almost. Is that something you've talked to your brother about?
No, not really. Because my brother's very stern. Like, I like to view him as a good cop. Whether his colleagues, I would imagine they do, because he's pretty high up at his job, right? But I know him personally. To be who he is, you have to be an asshole. You have to be stern. But you also have to know right and wrong. And I asked him, I haven't asked him about the Minnesota thing. I asked him about the murder, I guess. And he said his only thing was, obviously what happened sucks, but the only thing he can actually do right now is make sure that the people that are under him and the people that work side by side to him are properly trained and know right and wrong. That's all you really can do. And like, even though that kind of seems blunt, doesn't really seem like the most empathetic reaction, it's the truth though. It's like, unfortunately we can't take back that life, right? And like more and more needs to stop dying due to that. Every day. But they just got to be retrained. They have to. It's almost like you work in like a workforce, right? If someone chops their finger off on a machine, all right, you stop, OSHA comes through. It's like, why did this happen? Yeah. How do we prevent this, right? That needs to happen consistently on a regular basis, because I forgot who it was. I think it was Dave Chappelle that said, it's Chris Rock. Cops can't be bad, man. Like, their job entails bad, because you don't call the cops like, hey, we're having a barbecue. You don't call the cops for that. Right. You don't call the cops for like, hey, we have an ice cream truck here.
Bad shit's happening.
Bad stuff happens, and that's the reason why cops get called. Same thing in firefighters, right? Mm-hmm. But firefighters more than often save lives compared to cops, because cops have that job title that ensues that they might shoot somebody, right? Enforce the law. So their job calls for badness, but not every cop's bad by any means.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to think that most cops are good.
Of course. Like to think of course. That's how you should think, right? And I agree with that.
And it's certainly refreshing to hear you say that, because at a lot of, the more extreme, in a lot of just the protests, there's so much discussion. All cops are bastards. There's no good cops. Like, it's not, until this is defunded, until it's abolished, there's no good cops, Well, and I think that's a really hard... That's a hard logical thing to say to people, because you're going to have people who, like fucking Elijah, that cross this boundary of like, well, I'm black, but also my brother's a cop. And I know that not all cops are bad just because some cops kill people, but you can't express that view without being told that you are counter to what's going on.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's like, It's because it's made to seem like you're saying, oh, well, all lives matter. And that's not the argument that you're saying by saying we need to not be shitting on every police officer that we see, because we went to school with people that are police officers now, and we know who they are as people, and they're not shit. We fucking know Officer Brian. We know that Officer Brian is not a piece of shit just because he's a cop.
We need Officer Brian
like
in here.
You know what I'm saying? Like that, it just doesn't logically wash. But you can't even say that without it being turned out to being racist. You know, and that seems so backwards.
Well, I think there's another more complex layer on this. When you think about it, I know I have this problem, and I've worked right next to cops. When I worked for the Coast Guard, you know, we're a law enforcement branch primarily and all that. We work hand in hand with a lot of cops, right? I would work with the same 3 cops for 3 years at this certain station because they had their boat at our boat launch. And they were just always there. We became great friends with them and all this stuff. But that still doesn't, knowing that those people are human and they're good dudes and all this good stuff, and knowing that that's probably the vast majority of the people that are in that job, I still get nervous if a cop gets behind me on the freeway.
Certainly.
I still will, I have a serious problem with it. I will take the next fucking turn, wherever the fuck it is, so he's not back there. But that I think speaks more to the overall misuse of law enforcement in general, not even broaching the actual, you know, because I can't believe I'm going to say this because I have my white privilege. You know, I'm not worried that if I get pulled over by the cop that I'm going to get shot. I don't have a gun with me. I'm of the quote unquote right skin color to be able to not have to worry about that. That would be like the lefty white privilege argument, right? Like I don't have a systemic reason to be terrified of a cop if he pulls me over. But I still am, because that's the government's enforcement arm coming into my life to try to take money out of my pocket and strip my rights away and throw me in a fucking cage for something ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong. Maybe I broke a speed limit. Maybe I got a fucking tail light out. Whatever the fuck. It's not going to stop my heart from racing.
Yeah.
Right? Until you can fix that problem, you're not going to fix anybody's problem. And there's no regulation or law that you can bring in to fix that. Yeah. That has to be fixed on a societal level so that nobody should be afraid of the cops. Everybody, it's like the good old day. If you watch old movies from like the 50s and shit, like the cops were like, everybody knew their name. They walked around town. Everybody fucking knew who they were, and the cops knew everyone in town. Like that local policing. So that kind of brings us a little bit to that kind of defund, abolish police, you know, discussion that's happening.
Right.
I think something needs to literally systemically change in law enforcement to start a new relationship between law enforcement and the citizenry, regardless of race at that point. Like, no citizen should be afraid of law enforcement.
Yeah.
They should be there to protect and serve, not try to write tickets because it's the fucking end of the month. You tell me driving around Kitsap County this last month, at the last 2 days of the month, I couldn't drive 5 miles without seeing a fucking state patrol on the side of the road or a sheriff's deputy on the side of the road trying to get somebody so they can get that fucking tax revenue for the fucking state or the county or whatever municipality they fucking work for. Yeah. Until you fix that, I think you can fix that along with police brutality. So if we're looking at it in steps like we're talking about, you address policing and law enforcement first, because at that point, if you can reduce the fear of law enforcement and that fucked up relationship we have with law enforcement as the citizenry, we can go to the next step.
What do you think about that, Elijah?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's the only way to really address it. Because I think you definitely need police, because I'd rather have police than anarchists.
Yeah.
For sure. I'd rather have, as bad as it sounds, I'd rather have someone that's 3 to 6 months trained than someone that's not trained that only knows how to shoot a gun. Because regardless, that person has a little bit more knowledge on how to de-escalate a situation.
You don't want me coming to your house to save you. That's not...
No,
right?
And I think that's most people, right?
Yeah. I mean, my friends, I'll come save any of my friends, but you don't want me coming to your house if I don't know who you are, you know? That's no for good.
Sure.
Don doesn't need to be the informal sheriff of Keyport, you know what I mean?
I would do it if they asked.
Yeah, right. So,
So let me ask about this, right? Because I think that there's really something. I wrote this down, right? I believe that, and this is just what I wrote down, so it's what I was thinking at the time, right? So we'll flesh it out as I'm reading it out. So I believe that the problems of racial inequality need to be solved at a community level, and I've wrote down racial inequality because that's what we were talking about at the time, but it's, I think, reflective of the greater issue that we're talking about, and one of them in particular about police brutality. I think it's interesting what you said about community, right? I think one of the big problems with this idea of systemic racism, like you're talking about, is like a nationalized thing, right? And I think that we've seen, and I don't, tell me if this is not correct, right? But I think that we've seen throughout the history of the United States, but also in the last 6 months or so with Corona, that the federal government is not equipped to help everybody at the same time. Yeah. It is not designed, nor is it capable of solving everyone's problem at the same time. Yeah. I don't believe, and I'm not saying that we don't need to enshrine as a nation, things that ratify people's rights, but I'm saying that I don't think that this problem can be solved in the same way that it can.
Use the restroom, please.
Yeah. I don't think that this problem can be solved the same way in Minneapolis that it can be in Bremerton, because I don't think that they have the same problems. And so I think to address them as the same issue is extremely problematic, and I think it's, God damn it. Community involvement, right? Yeah. Is that I think that is the answer to so many problems of what we have going on, right? And let me give you like a really weird example that made me start thinking about this. Last week, we're walking around Keyport, right? And there's a woman who lives in Keyport, shout out, her name is Mrs. P, right? Mrs. P? How old is Mrs. P, babe?
Jesus only knows.
Wow. Older than shit, right? Mrs. P has a husband who works, and she has like super severe dementia, right?
Oh boy.
So Mrs. P
sounds like kind of a fun combination.
Walks around Keyport all day, right? Walks around, has a piece of paper in her hand. She walks down to the Merc, the little store, the Mercantile in Keyport. When they go down there, they, make her something. They write down on the piece of paper what day it is, the date, what time she came down, and whether or not she's got her mail already. She checks her mail twice a day. She just walks around Keyport. People just keep an eye on her. They just watch her, right? She's able to safely walk around the neighborhood, and like people are just watching her, right? So the first time Jordan worked at the Mercantile, so she knows this whole story. So the whole
community is taking care of one person who needs help.
Everyone. Right? And so
I get goosebumps.
So the first time, right? Jordan's told me about this woman before. And so she'll go to the Merc like once or twice a day, checks her mail twice a day, right? So we saw her twice on our walk around Keyport, and she stopped and said just almost the exact same thing both times, right? And so I was like, okay, what the fuck is happening? So she explains this to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember you saying this, right? And at first I'm disturbed at the idea of people allowing a woman who's mentally ill to walk the streets and just do whatever she wants, right? And then I'm like, no, because they're taking care of her. Like, she's not in danger. Jordan's like, she's walked into the water a couple of times. Someone noticed every single time. Saw her do it, went out and helped her. Someone's watching her. They're keeping an eye on her, right? I just told a story about a woman named Mrs. P, has dementia, who lives in Keyport. That's where we live. And the whole community keeps an eye on her. She has a piece of paper they write down at the little store in Keyport, like whether or not she's been down there and what time and date and stuff like that, so that when she goes home and takes a nap, she knows what she's done that day.
That's good.
And so everyone in the community just watches her. She just walks around, does whatever she wants, and that's it. Like that's the answer. That is the answer, is for people to give a shit about, and not even give a shit, right? Because I care that my neighbors are humans. I care that they're people. I care for their safety. Neighbor across the street, he's a real asshole, lets his dog shit on my lawn. If I knew that he was in trouble, I would still run into his house to save him and his family. I would do it. I would do it because he's a fucking human being and he deserves it. Don't like him. Don't want to hang out with him. I would heavily consider not doing him a favor if he asked me for something, That's a problem. Like that's a problem. Just in general that people have, that they don't know their neighbors. They don't care about their neighbors as a standard person as opposed to like human beings. I think everyone cares, like I said, about their neighbors as at a base level of a human being, But how many people are like, well, I'm going to wait until my neighbor goes inside before I go out and take my trash out so I don't have to see my neighbor when I go out there. So maybe I won't see him.
So I don't have to have that
for how long
because I don't care.
were
about
Jordan and I willing to fucking drive to Paulsbo to buy things instead of Silverdale or Bremerton because we didn't want to run into people that we knew from high school? Because I don't want to have to stop and talk to them, you know? Yeah. That's shitty. That's fucked up. I don't like small talk, you know? But that's the shit that's like, it disconnects you from the world that's immediately around you, you know? And if we're not tapped into what the problems are with our immediate community, then we don't have any way to solve it. We just prescribe to national issues of things that are going on. When, like the example I gave to Colin is, it's like the things that will help in Minneapolis are not the things that will help in Bremerton.
No.
You know, they're completely different issues. And if you try and subscribe that same treatment to Bremerton as you do to Minneapolis, it's not going to work. People are going to get really upset in one place or another. There's going to be people that get upset because it doesn't work for them. It's not the same thing, you know? This issue and most issues, they need to be solved on a community basis, whether that's in the town, whether it's the county, the state, however, you know, but it needs to be decided by the people who live here and know what's going on, you know. But if we don't have even our finger on the pulse of our town, then we don't have any fucking idea on how to solve it, you know. And I don't think that it's inherently a bad thing for people to be having protests in Bremerton and in Silverdale for what's going on, you know? But I think that it's really hard for a lot of older people especially to understand the connection between a protest in Bremerton and a protest in Minneapolis where George Floyd was killed, you know? And I'm not saying that that's the correct way to see it, but for people who are 70, 80 years old who grew up in a different time, they're unable to see that connection, you know? I feel that it may provide more long-term value to this cause if it's addressed on a community level so that we can talk about the things nationally that are an issue and the way that they reflect on this community. This is the way that we see them here. You know, we don't see it the way that it happens here, but this is how this translates into our area, you know? And I think a good way, the redlining laws, or not laws, but verbiage that you're talking about, you know? That doesn't happen here anymore. You won't be denied a house for being black now. But how many people know that that's in their housing documents? You know, tell people that, because if you're telling people that, they're like, shit, I'm not separated from this. All these people are like, I'm not racist. I know cops. I know all this stuff. The same people that are saying all lives matter, not because they're racist, but because they're upset about their views, their feelings not being represented. Show them. We understand your cousin who's a cop, your brother who's a cop is not killing people because of their race. But look at the way that this has reflected on where we're at. Mm-hmm. This does exist. This has happened. And this is the way that it translated to this area. So now understand the bigger picture of what's going on and let's fucking do something about it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So,
like, if you don't see it in your backyard, then you don't really give a shit. You know, it's way easier to not give a shit. And if you don't see police brutality in our area because it's not a huge issue, and if you don't see systemic racism in our area because it's not a huge issue, really easy to be disconnected from that. You know, really easy to just, like, it's, you know, fucking Atlanta, fucking Minneapolis, you know, fucking Michigan, fucking Chicago, like.
And then you go, fucking Seattle.
Do you know what I'm saying? But it's not that simple. And that's what we've been talking this whole time. Yeah. It's not so simple. It's not as easy to disconnect, you know. But if you're not able to draw a connection to your own community, it's so easy for so many people to be disconnected from it.
Well, I think that also lies a problem that to fix policing cannot be fixed on a national level.
Oh,
because
it's a problem.
There is no, there's
That's
no
the problem.
We don't have a federal police force. We do. It's called the FBI.
Right.
But it's all state and down. We have the state troopers who the governor can make laws so that they can do whatever the fuck. And I'm sure the governor can make certain state laws to have the municipalities change their laws and so on and so forth. But it's got to go state, it's got to go county, and it's got to go city.
They're just fiscally tied, and so that's why the big call is for, like, a defund the police, you know? And before we move on to that, I want to ask you if you have any thoughts about, we talked about community and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. I was gonna combat you with, because you brought up 70 and whatever, 6-year-olds or whatever, so let's just say like 50 and older, right? Now, how many 50 and olders do we know that have Facebook? Almost all of them, right?
A lot of them.
Yeah. A lot of them, right? So I think a lot of the news gets filtered down and watered down through Facebook.
Yes.
Oh, so I think a lot of them should get encouraged to get a Twitter and then follow the right people, because that's where you see the raw That's
people
where you
that
see the raw
hate Twitter
stuff.
just don't know what Twitter is.
The friend that we have that came at us all twisted about the way doesn't have a Twitter.
See, that's the thing.
And that's you follow me on Twitter. I'm all goddamn time I'm on Twitter. I've been the shit that I do not say on Facebook because I fucking hate Facebook.
Yeah.
The shit that I don't say on Instagram because I don't like Instagram. I'm on Twitter all the goddamn time.
Twitter's where the raw
saying the
stuff
shit that I'm saying here. You know. So this same woman, the same person who accuses us of being silent and not standing up for anything. You don't even see anything that we're saying because this is where this is happening. This is where this discussion is happening. This is where, I think the way that things get filtered through media and social media is a huge problem. You know, like I was talking about CNN just reporting on the autonomous zone. You know, it's all full of lies.
Yeah.
There was one day last week where Jay Inslee got asked about the autonomous zone, and he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
I saw that.
And then the very next day, CNN interviews him about the autonomous zone, and he says, no, nothing illegal is going on there. So tell me why you're using this guy as a credible source when 24 hours before he said he's never heard of it. But that's what CNN is using as a source. Someone who is admittedly not credible on this situation. You know, the most trusted name in news is just a whole article full of lies. You know, but that's the shit that like you said, that the older generation is looking at. Because when they were growing up, CNN was legit. You could trust CNN. You could trust these news companies, Walter Cronkite, these motherfuckers. You could trust them. You know, they were reporting real shit. And now they're literally lying on the internet and don't care. Because people like Mehdi Hassan, that's how I saw it. Mehdi Hassan retweeted it. And it's like, yeah, this motherfucker, they're talking about this shit. They don't even know what they're talking about. It's like, dog, you're lying. You're perpetuating lies and what's going on here. And you don't even care, you know? And that's a hard reality for people who've been on both sides of the technological gap. You know, I think a hard line to cross. Because it's a dark thing, the way that media is using social media, you know, but it's also social media that has exposed problems like people being murdered by the police to everybody so that we can all see it and realize it's a problem and try and do something about it, you know? And so there's this real double-edged sword aspect to social media of what it provides, and at the same time how horrible and fucking destructive it is to people's lives, themselves personally, you know, comparison like to other people and shit like that. And
well, I hate to say it, man, but there is almost as much self-responsibility. There's almost as much responsibility put on oneself to go on and get your news or whatever it is from social media as there is for someone obtaining and using a firearm. It is up to you to know what you are doing in a responsible manner when you try to read your news feed and you see all this stuff on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter. You can't take any of that stuff as verbatim fact. You need to do the time and the research to figure out whether that one statement right there that really got you triggered somewhere emotionally or whatever the fuck, and you want to fucking tweet something real quick, you want to have a reactionary statement. You need to stop, check yourself, figure out where the fuck you are, look at what that guy is saying, what that person is saying, and then find out if it's fucking true, because who knows if it is or not. It's a total crapshoot. And then you can formulate your opinion and say what you want off of that. Yeah. There's no difference in social media now than it is to watching any mainstream media outlet. It's a sad truth that easy access to information doesn't mean that information is worth a shit. Right. And I thought we all learned this in school when you couldn't just
you couldn't use Wikipedia.
You couldn't use Wikipedia. Yeah. Right? Or for somebody as old as I am, young men. How old are you?
25.
We graduated the same year.
Same year.
Too goddamn young. There's 7 years of separation here, and
time is now, old man.
Exactly. Like it was when I was in high school, right? Google was not a credible source of information. You had to go to Ask Jeeves or
really Ask Jeeves.
Yes, right.
Google's the only place to get information.
And now look at
DuckDuckGo is really the only place to get information. To be honest, DuckDuckGo.
My inner book boy sends me to DuckDuckGo a lot.
Yeah,
which I will
If
say,
you want real information on the book, boys, come to Salt of the Streets. Ask Marquise. Marquise knows.
does
What?
he? I'm really.
Yeah, no, I got it. It's right here.
So there was one thing that I thought about when I was in the bathroom, right? When we were talking about police and community-based, policing and all this stuff and how we should have a good relationship with the community. One problem in that logic. Law enforcement, at one point or another throughout the point of their job, need to be an elevated point of authority.
Yeah, we're not supposed to be on a good relationship with them. That's just
Right.
kind of the nature of the beast, right? That's why I'm kind of saying like their job doesn't ensue us to be friendly with them, but them, it's so weird because it's like ass backwards, but they do essentially work for the people, right? Because they're supposed to protect the people, yet the people are never going to see them as equals because they're not equals.
Yeah.
They're not.
It's always an us versus them.
Human being, but once you put on that uniform, you have that badge, you have a target on your back. I get that.
And you also
But
have authority.
You have authority, though, and that's the big A word that us citizens don't really have. We just have a bunch of our rights, but you also have these rights. You just get a paycheck for, authority.
And that's,
Therein which lies the fucking problem.
Yeah. And
How do we do that? How do you put certain citizens how do you elevate them to have greater power and authority over the rest of the citizens? I swear you could do
you got
that.
to pick the right guys,
And I think this was probably something I heard on Rogan this week, but I would not be opposed to paying police officers twice as much as whatever the fuck they're making now. Depending on who, we'll just call
Starting
that
salary,
a shit ton of money, right?
Starting salary for a police officer in Bremerton or Kitsap County Sheriff is about 60 G's a year, 62 or so.
Round it up to $100,000 a year, but make it as difficult to become a police officer as difficult to become a Navy SEAL.
Okay, so I agree with you.
That level of, obviously not the same training.
Yeah.
But that level of difficulty to come in. Is that something worth talking about?
It's definitely something worth talking about. I think the only issue and the first issue that you would really come into a conflict is just like the military, eventually you're going to need more people.
Yeah.
You're always going to need more people. Like you can never say, all right, we have enough cops. We're good. We're not hiring right now, Because
the populace is always growing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people are going to call out. And if something really does hit the fan, you're going to need a lot of people that are assigned for that job, right? So,
even now, it's hard to find cops. The sheriff's office and Bremerton Police are hiring all the time.
Like I told you, when I lived in Long Island, I fucking saw on the billboard of the main freeway advertisements to become a Seattle PD officer. Starting
crazy.
salary like $72,000 or some shit. I'm like, I'm on the opposite side of the goddamn country. They're that hard up for cops in Seattle.
That's crazy.
Well, I would imagine,
Hence
just
why I
as a
applied.
sidetrack, but I would imagine that at the time that you were over there would have been around the time that Seattle was under a real close microscope for police brutality. There was a string of,
it's like
not there isn't a history, but there was
07.
a string of like 10 years or so probably in the beginning of like the cell phone era where there was like just a string of body cameras and stuff like that when they were using them and weren't thinking to turn them off yet before they beat someone's ass. There was a series of allegations and also confirmed cases of police brutality within the Seattle Police Department. So I would imagine that they were losing a lot of workers at that time.
Recruitment went down.
Do you remember that? We were like in junior high and high school, and I'm not going to say every day or anything, but there was a series of, just brutal motherfuckers getting their ass beat over nothing. Simple tickets, getting their ass beat. Some shit that you would expect in like Chicago or something happening in Seattle. And you're like, what the fuck?
Well, let's not forget that George Floyd died for $20.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
$20
Stuff like that. I remember when we were in high school, this is a side too, but I remember in high school there was a shooting on Rainier Avenue. People getting after it just on opposite sides of the street. Just shooting across the street at each other on Rainier Avenue. Shit like that happens all the time, especially along that area. Shit like that happens all the time. And I imagine it's hard to find someone who
just sign up for that.
Who signs up for it and also is a good guy at the same time. There's a lot of people who
It can be a good guy 20
the whole
years
time.
in the future.
Yeah.
And so my thing was, I was talking to a coworker, and we were talking about it was, as bad as it sounds, because if you ask someone, you want to be a cop or do you want to work for your U.S. military, right? Regardless of branch, the odds of us going to a war is going to suck, right? Because like the odds are always pretty decently high. But
It could happen at any time.
yeah, it could happen at any time, right? But no matter what, you have all these different jobs that are required to that job. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to actually be the one that's going to the war.
Right.
A cop, on the other hand, though, you are basically what the military is, just inside of America. So on the other end of the spectrum, you're the one that puts on a badge, has a target on your back, has to enforce the law. It's almost like I'm not gonna say it's more difficult, but
I would say it probably is.
It probably is, though, right?
It's a lot more ducking and weaving and hoops to go through versus, especially if it is an actual war, the rules become very goddamn clear very quickly.
Yeah.
I'd wonder if you're statistically more likely to die as a police officer or as a member of the military. Probably.
I would say by a lot.
You probably have to pick a branch to make it.
Make a branch.
Like maybe the Marines. Like if you are more likely to die as a member of the Marine Corps or as a member of the police force nationally. I would be interested to know.
And that's
not that it
because
doesn't change anything, but I'd be interested.
A cop
to know.
in South Chicago is not going to have the same life expectancy as a cop in Seattle
or a Kitsap County Sheriff's Officer.
Yeah. So how do you even weigh that fucking average?
Yeah. No, it certainly won't be fair across the board.
No,
it would be a per capita type deal.
You know what the worst thing is? The more and more we talk about the problems, the harder and harder and more complex the problem gets.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting even more frustrated because even things that I thought, because this has occupied my mind, obviously, 24/7 for the last 2 weeks plus. But it's like even something I thought last Monday now, I'm challenging my own thoughts on. Oh, dog. Hey. So that's Chloe. What's up, Showdog?
What's up, Chloe?
Hey, Chloe.
She's scared, sorry.
Yes, she did. Oh, I know, Bear. She's just so excited.
Beautiful dog, bro.
The only problem is she's very vocal and she wants to be a part of the podcast. Unfortunately,
she loves the podcast.
She does.
Biggest fan, right?
Yes.
So there. Oh, I had a segue. There's something I know we did want to talk about. That was the proposed legislation coming out of the House relating to police reform, right?
Yeah.
And a few things that were kind of broad strokes. I kind of was going through the article this morning. I haven't seen any proposed actual legislation yet, but essentially
not from the Senate. No,
definitely not from the Senate. I did see the one black Republican senator apparently is being forced, I would assume, to take up the mantle of the Republican response to legislation coming from the fucking House.
Of course.
Welcome to Mitch McConnell's fucking Senate. But essentially the three things that I kind of picked out from that article that you sent me from Reuters was we're looking at banning chokeholds as part of it. Which I
obviously don't think is an inherently bad thing. There's I've heard a lot of people talk, not to interrupt you, but I've heard a lot of people talk for a long time, Joe Rogan especially, about police officers potentially learning jujitsu, so that you can restrain people in an extremely safe manner so as to know that they won't die, But
every time he talks about jujitsu, it's a friend trying to kill you.
Yes, but and so I think that the chokeholds thing I don't think is. That's not bad.
Allowing victims of police misconduct to sue for damages. So in other words, that's talking to that, what's that type of immunity called?
Protected immunity or...
something along those lines. It's a form of immunity. It's right on the tip of my tongue. It's bothering me. But it's a form of immunity that a cop has for, utilizing... use of force.
Qualified immunity.
So it's because they're in law enforcement, these things can happen in the line of duty, so he's not directly responsible, right?
Okay.
And so the removing of that as part of this legislation essentially makes it so that an individual police officer is individually liable for whatever they do on the job, period. And then they can be held responsible for that because they are not a military member. They did not give up their rights in lieu of a different form of rights, hence the UCMJ, so on and so forth. But they are held to a different standard, and we have a separate court system for military people, right?
Right.
And so, but when it comes to police, you're talking citizen on citizen. So at that point, you can make them legally liable for whatever the fuck they do in the line of duty because they are a citizen too, and they are held to the same legal standards that everyone else should be.
Yeah.
But as of right now, there's a lot of due to that qualified immunity problem, there's a lot of police officers that get off after fucking performing a capital murder on somebody,
or don't
right?
get charged, or
Yeah. And then it was, banning chokeholds and then the requiring the use of body cameras, which we already know the federal government cannot mandate that from the top down because they don't run police departments.
Right.
And we heard
they can release
Mayor Jimmy-
guidance, federal guidance or guidelines of this is how it must be done. But
the federal
I imagine
government,
that part would get questioned pretty hard in the courts.
Yes, it certainly would. Thank
In
God,
more
too.
conservative states, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you heard Jenny Durkin, mayor of Seattle, talk about why the police don't have their body cameras on during the protests.
Why was that?
Because there is some legacy law that they think is just enough to maintain to this day that a police officer cannot have their body camera on during a protest because that essentially would be surveilling private citizens exercising their First Amendment rights.
God. That is...
Tell me that's not fucked up. But this is coming from the probably one of the most
my
progressive
God,
fucking
yeah.
mayors of one of the most progressive cities in the entire fucking country. And they're saying, nah, we have this old law that we like because we don't want to surveil protesters while they're doing their thing.
They also have their badge numbers covered up, and she also banned the use of tear gas.
Impeach her.
And then the very next day, they're tear gassing people at the protest. It's why even say it? Why even say it? And then I'm not going to say she made her do it, but then Carmen Best comes out and says that it was her decision to deploy the tear gas. I was like, that's fine, but there's no way you're doing it without the mayor saying, yeah, go ahead and do it, because she just fucking said, don't do it for 30 days.
Yep.
So there's no way you're going to just decide as the police chief that you're just going to override that. No. And they're all hanging out in the same place. You know that they're all in constant communication if they're not in the same area. There's no way that Carmen Best unilaterally decides to override the mayor's decision to ban tear gas for 30 days in Seattle. That's bullshit. Jenny Durkin is in on that shit. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is true, according to USA Today fact check, that tear gas is a chemical weapon banned by the Geneva Convention in war.
Yeah.
How the fuck are citizens of the United States in a law enforcement capability allowed to use chemical warfare against citizens exercising their First Amendment rights?
Yeah, so let me...
I have heard that on Rogan and I hadn't fact checked it.
I have an ending point.
One source.
I have an ending point on this, and then before we go, we have to talk to Elijah about his work and his experience during Corona.
So we're going to be talking about all of this stuff over probably at least the next couple months. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, no, we're going to keep talking about this. And so we'll talk about the, Capitol Hill zone more. One of the things that I wrote down this morning is that one of my biggest concerns with the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone right now, right, is because in the beginning there was questions about extortion and all that stuff. It seems to be getting progressively more peaceful now, as have all the protests and all that stuff.
It's getting real Occupy Wall Street-ish.
Yeah,
except if Occupy Wall Street was run by a bunch of flunkies.
So my biggest concern now, right, because I have three. I have three major concerns with CHAZ now.
Okay.
And the first one is super pissed off right-winged individuals that decide that they're going to go and take back the autonomous zone, that they're getting weird backwards media and they decide that it's time to move and they're going to go in there and do it, right? Some Proud Boys, some whatever the fuck, that decide that it's time, right? Mm-hmm. My other concern is the demands that they posted on medium.com in a lot of cases are going to be a non-starter in discussions with the police, right? So I don't know if you've seen this, which is also backwards because they have like a sign posted at the autonomous zone of things that they want of demands, and then the formal ones they've posted on the internet, and they're also saying oh
yeah, there it is. Right.
So now they're saying like, oh, the media is bastardizing these demands. That's not what they want. So the demands on Medium, the very first one says they want a full defunding and abolition of the Seattle Police Department. They want a canceling of all active pensions for Seattle police officers, and they want an abolition of the local judicial system.
So verbatim, the Seattle Police Department and attached court system are beyond reform. We do not request reform. We demand abolition. We demand that the Seattle Council and the mayor defund and abolish the Seattle Police Department and the attached criminal justice apparatus. That means 100% of funding, including existing pensions for Seattle Police, at an equal level of priority. We also demand the city disallow the operations of ICE in the city of Seattle. That's their first demand.
That's the very first one.
And it goes on. So far.
There's some stuff that's not that wild, but there's a lot of stuff that has to do with like restoring voting rights and free housing and like a lot of stuff that's just politically and judicially going to be a non-starter when you're talking to the government. This is from what the collective free, what does it say at the top?
Yeah, it is the demands of the collective black voices at Free Capitol Hill to the government of Seattle, Washington.
So this was taken down by someone at the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone by the leaders of Black Lives Matter, whatever group, is existing within the CHAZ. Because I don't know who the leader of CHAZ is. I have no idea.
I don't think there is.
The collective, whatever this is, is what I would prescribe the most to, because the issue that they're all there, that they're to protest is racial equality, systemic racism, and police brutality. So this is the list of demands that I would assume,
we demand a retrial of all people of color currently serving a prison sentence of violent crime by a jury of their peers in their community. So I think if I recall correctly, this was actually dictated, or not dictated, but it was transcribed from somebody actually like getting up there and reading this.
Right.
So
So
there's a lot of grammatical errors in here that would justify that as well.
So that's another one of my big concerns is that if that's what they're standing by, that's going to be a non-starter for the government of the state and of the feds. I mean, people are a lot of stuff that you can't do that. There's a difference when you're talking about defunding. You're saying defunding, and then you're saying, well, that's not what I mean because of this and this, right? There's a question about verbiage, right? And you can start to get people on board when you're talking about reform of police department and spending money differently and stuff like that. But then after a week you've been saying that, and then you post a document that says, no, we were just bullshitting. We're actually talking about a full abolition of the police department. You're shooting yourself in the foot because you have just taken away all of the advance that you've got over the last week on this issue, right? Over people who, like me, the first time I heard it, I said, that's stupid as fuck. And then I start hearing like, okay, you're talking about spending money differently and trying to incorporate different systems. Like, okay, I can understand.
Yeah, terrible.
I can get this, right? Yeah, but then to immediately revert back from that to, no, we mean a full repeal of the police department. I don't think is going to help them get anywhere. And my third concern is the federal government, especially under Donald Trump and the way that he's talked about the autonomous zone and the protests. One of my biggest concerns is like a Waco or Ruby Ridge style situation where the government decides that enough is enough and they take this down with force. That's extremely concerning to me because I foresee, right? This is a lot of foreseeing, right? But if that is to happen, that will invigorate the anarchistic portion of the left that is willing to take up arms and cause more damage, just like we saw in the beginning of these protests where things are being looted, they're being destroyed, breaking up sidewalks just to throw bricks for the cause of causing trouble. That is only going to be intensified if they go in that autonomous zone and they break that shit up like Donald Trump is talking about doing. He's talking about sending the National Guard in, and no, we're done with that. We're taking it over. We're doing it. If that's what they do, like they did at Waco, and they try and paint these people like they did the Branch Davidians, they try and paint the people at Ruby Ridge like they did, that's not going to fly. Social media didn't exist at Ruby Ridge. It did not exist at Waco. That is not going to fly here. We've watched this happen from the very beginning. Yeah, the John Brown Gun Club era, that's fine. We've seen that. You go in there and you forcibly take this land back with the military. Not good. That's one of my biggest concerns.
So, given the fact that some group of individuals have taken over and occupied a 6 blocks radius of Seattle, which is highly illegal, and they're restricting people's rights and all this.
Certainly.
What do you do about it? Is it a low?
Oh man, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know. I have to think about that a lot.
Yeah.
I got to talk to way more people. I don't know. I don't know because as it sits right now, it seems like a bunch of fucking idiots. You know, I mean, if you look at even the garden that they've done, Elijah, they literally took cardboard. And I'm not trying to shit on people.
I'll show you.
They literally took cardboard and laid it out over grass,
It's
and then poured
magical.
like 4 inches of topsoil on it and planted plants in it.
So this is why I don't.
That's the garden they're going to grow to sustain themselves in this time. Plants can't grow through fucking cardboard, dog. Like, it doesn't work that way. And you can't grow an entire tomato plant in this much soil.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't. So it's just people who don't know what they're doing, working on something, which I understand. I get it. I'm not saying like the idea is stupid, but it's being extremely poorly executed, you know? And you can see a lot of good stuff. There's some really established stuff. There's movies going on 24/7 to try and educate people on the things that they're talking about. You know, there's also big food stands now that they have food back there. There's shit there that people are donating that you can go and you can get. But at one point they also had a bowl with bags of Sprite because they didn't have cups or anything. They had a 2-liter of Sprite. They're pouring it into Ziploc bags and they got it in a bowl. Just take one bag and move on. You know,
that was their garden area.
Yeah.
And now there's a guy with these 2 sticks in there trying to do some crazy maneuvers, and he's just not doing well. Yeah. But there's no more plants there anymore. So the cardboard thing, right? Ben Shapiro and shit was talking about this and trying to make fun of it. But Ben Shapiro is a city dweller and has no concept of what that truly means. So like cardboard in a gardening situation, utilized properly, yes, does a job.
But not this way.
Yeah, not that way.
No.
You need about another foot of soil on top
Exactly. Yeah, you can use it to kill the grass. You can use it to compost. There's all kinds of shit you can do with it, but not
It'll
this.
kill
You can't do this
any
with it.
weeds and grass that are going to grow up there because it'll starve them oxygen and light. And so they will dissipate. And then because it is cardboard, it'll biodegrade. It'll become some nitrates and all that, and it's good for the soil. And then you're living, right? But that's not what's happening here. It's like I said, I'm not worried about the CHAZ because the CHAZ is going to disappear sooner rather than later because the people that are trying to do it,
it's a strange place, the CHAZ.
Don't know what they're doing.
There could be a show on it.
Oh, it's so
and that's that's like my thing is like I'm not. Yeah, they don't know what they're doing. You know, they've got a couple of people there with guns because those people were into guns beforehand.
Yeah.
You know, at first it was being made like they broke into the police station and they stole some guns, and you had some random people who were out there just with guns. I don't know. It's a strange deal, and I think that, like I said, one of my bigger concerns is just the verbiage and stuff that's being thrown around that makes it difficult to have any type of productive conversation about what's happening, especially about police reform, reallocation of funds, anything like that. You know, when you start to get some headway and convince people that's what you're talking about, then this group comes out and says, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about everything gone, even the pensions from the people who aren't even cops anymore. Fuck your retirement. We want that shit. Like, I just don't see how that is gonna get anywhere productive.
You want to know what some good old-fashioned leftist progressive white privilege get you? CHAZ.
I've seen people.
That's what happens.
That we went to school with that, and we'll transition this into talking about your experiences, but that like went to college after we graduated high school, and they're really activated by what's going on. Like, capitalism is racist, and it's like I just don't understand.
Read Howard Zinn and you'll understand.
I just don't get where it comes from,
There is enough literature out there to fill bad ideas that they teach on the college level that can turn people's thinking onto that side.
Have you seen stuff like that?
And if it's not challenged.
No, I haven't, no.
Oh.
Not the whole capitalism is like race.
I asked him if he'd seen stuff like that. Just because we went to school together, so we know a lot of the same people. Yeah, just a lot of stuff like that I think is just counter to logical thinking, you know? And I think it's also counter to any type of productive movement for what's going on.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think with something like this, you only, as monumental as this is, and like, it's awesome to see everyone come together kind of for a common goal, kind of. I think with something like this, though, you only get one shot and you can't really mess it up. And
if you're talking about capitalism is racist, you're fucking it up.
Yeah, you have to shoot accurately when you're coming with this. And I'm not out there in the field, so it's kind of weird to talk about. It's kind of like the same people are like, abolish the police, do all this, do that. But they're also the same people who are like, hey, be safe out there at the protest, you know, fuck police, but hey, stay safe. I'm not going to be out there protesting, but be safe out there.
Also, the same people who are anti-Second Amendment, who
exactly,
are also in favor of abolishing the police force. And it's like, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, who you're going to call if they come to your house, you know, but I just don't, in a situation like this,
well, it's
how are you going to be safe?
Yeah.
You know, that just doesn't.
It's utopian thinking, and there's no bringing it out to a rational conclusion of what happens. It's just, if there are no guns, there's no gun violence. It's like,
There's going to be a violence.
This is a real
There's going to be violence
world.
somewhere, though.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be something, but there was one other, I can't remember.
That's all right. Let me ask you about this. So, goddamn, that was a great conversation. So,
that was 2 hours on one topic.
Because part of this is we want to get an idea of everyone's experience during the shutdown and everything like that. Because it's so where do you work at the shipyard?
Yeah.
Right?
So life's been perfectly normal for me. Everyone around me, a year and 4 months.
What did you do before that?
Sub custodian for the school district, and then discount tire, so tire technician.
Right. The tires.
Yeah.
You and Randy, right? Randy used to work there? Yeah,
I got him a job there.
Word.
Good hire or bad hire?
We're both out. We're both at the shipyard now.
There you go.
Let's put it that way.
So what do you do in the shipyard?
Work on submarines.
And so because you are not any type of immunocompromised, you stayed at work this whole time?
Yep, this whole time throughout the whole closure when they were putting everybody on admin leave, I've been at the shipyard.
Trenton's worked there for a really long time. He has asthma, and so he was one of the first people that was sent home on administrative leave because he has asthma.
So I also have asthma, but I've also heard it's pretty hard to go to like the doctor to like actually get that note.
Yeah.
Like to actually call them up because they're busy, right? Because this is like the peak of all that. So I never just like... I guess I never tried, you know? It's like, whatever.
So is yours just, it's not documented at work, but you have asthma?
It's documented, but the word that they're looking for is like severe. Severe or like really bad. It's like keywords. And if you have that keyword, you'd still be out till this day. And it would be like 3 months counting, so.
And Trenton's only been back at work for maybe like 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were doing like 2 week cycles of like, nope, stay home for another 2, stay home for another 2.
A lot of people stayed off for like a month. Yeah, a month or 2.
Well, I think that was kind of the story with our buddy Caleb, too.
Mm-hmm.
He
just got in.
Yeah, he just got in, started work and all that stuff, but then his wife they got pregnant. They just got married and all that good stuff, right? Yeah. And so they were like, no, dude, you just go home.
Isaiah,
your wife's pregnant. But then
Isaiah.
He's back to work now, and she's still pregnant.
So they relieved a lot of... So stupid.
The government.
The government makes
They weren't well thought out, let's just put it that way. But like after like a month and a half, they relieved the fact that if you're like there to take care of a family member that's prone to it, then you have to come back to work. So a lot of people came back. So to see it like from like going to ghost town to people slowly and surely come back, it's kind of crazy because there's still a lot of people out till this day. Like everyone that's even remotely old, like 65, are still gone. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, there you go. Dog is really wanting to come hang out.
Oh,
I hear her barking.
So do you live by yourself? Do you own a house? Do you rent an apartment? What do you do?
I live with my girlfriend. We live in the top of a house.
Word.
So like a big ass house on top of it. It's like the attic of it.
That's awesome because out here I haven't seen that very much. But when I was young and single and I was living on the East Coast, like the majority of people lived in like a basement apartment or a second story apartment on a split level house. I don't see that much out here, and I think it's a travesty, first of all, because it's one of the only affordable ways people can live.
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah, because fuck, man, I'll just say the only reason I was able to get this house was because I knew a guy who gave me a hookup. Because otherwise, I'd never be able to afford a house out here because housing prices out here are insane. So I like the fact that there's still those living situations set up in this area, because for one, it helps homeowners out because you get a cut on your, on your mortgage, because you got people living up in the half of your house that you're not going to fucking live in anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole nother. I work in construction, and so putting houses up and everything, and the size of these houses and stuff, I have a lot of problems with how we create new homes in the area.
Yeah.
But I'm just really glad to hear that that's a situation that still exists out here. So that's good.
We live in a basement apartment. Jordan's grandma has a house in Keyport. Yeah, and so we live in the basement apartment of that house.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
This is
good
the way
living.
to
I mean,
live.
it's comfortable living. So.
I lived in multiple basement apartments throughout my life, and it's fucking great.
Yeah, it's comfortable for sure.
Well, we have one kid. It still works. You know?
Exactly.
We had like a big laundry and storage area that I just separated into like 3 quarters and 1 quarter, and built Dax's room in one part and then left the other part for the laundry.
Yeah, there you go.
Here you go, dog. You can hang out in here. Yeah, we plan on making it work as long as we possibly can, And
That's what the old studio is going to be now. I'll show you before you leave, like where we used to be set up.
Yeah.
But that'll eventually be kids' room.
So
we don't need a big room.
Your girlfriend, what does she do for work? Was she affected by the shutdown?
No, so she also hasn't been affected. She works for customs. So she does like all the international flights, basically the cop portion of that, right?
That's
really?
dope.
Yeah, so I'm super in the middle about a lot of things. So yeah.
Wow.
So,
that's very interesting.
So as far as like the gun thing, she's the one with the gun. Like she's the one that has to carry a gun like all the time. So.
Oh, that's fine then.
That's very interesting.
For sure,
you got somebody who knows how to use a gun. She's strapped. That's cool.
Yeah,
you don't need to worry about it then.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility absolved.
Yeah,
I don't need to worry about it.
Not mine.
We're going shooting tomorrow. It took forever when all this stuff popped off. People freaked out, bought guns, bought ammo, so you couldn't buy ammo. So
I know.
It was took a long time to get enough ammo up to be able to feel comfortable to go shooting and still not have no ammo at home, It's a strange deal. I bought when the checks came out, the $1,200 checks, right? When those happened, I bought some ammo online, a bulk order that said it was in stock, but then it was actually it'll be here in 6 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then 4 weeks later, I got another email that was actually it'll be here 6 weeks from now. And it just kept getting back ordered. And I canceled most of them. And I guess one of them I didn't for this gun's a 10 millimeter. So the ammunition, it's less common. So it's easier to get.
Okay.
And it shipped yesterday.
Damn.
I bought it when the checks came out.
Holy shit.
However long ago that was, because that's what I was waiting for, was to get that extra money. And I bought it that day, and it shipped yesterday.
Damn.
So whenever that first round of checks came out until yesterday is how long it took to get 500 rounds of 10 millimeter ammunition, which is very uncommon. Very uncommon. I've not met another person who has a 10 millimeter gun.
I don't know anybody either.
Yeah, it's just rare. And I was shocked that it took that long. It's a weird time. Colin told me when all this happened, we were supposed to have a live show, right? Our very first live show.
I was looking forward to that,
week after Denzel was supposed to be here.
Yeah.
We were live show, and then everything was closed, and
So we did an empty live show.
yeah, and we did that. Why the fuck did I start talking about this?
10 millimeter guns,
10
live
millimeter,
show, shut down,
live show, shut down.
hard to get ammo. No, swing on and a miss.
I don't even.
Well, it's not
Lost. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, apparently, since unaffected is pretty nice. So you just couldn't go out to eat. That's the only. Did you go out to eat a lot before?
I guess every weekend we'll go out to breakfast. That's about it, though.
And then
Breakfast is
that
great
does
meal to
suck
go out to.
because same. Work. She usually doesn't get home till 8 o'clock with her job and how far we have to. She's got to come and shit now. So going out to eat during the week is not a thing.
Yeah.
But going down to the fucking Hands Grill on a Sunday morning
Grill.
for breakfast is amazing. But I couldn't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Sucks. And I don't even know what kind of... Are retail stores starting to open up now?
Everything's opening
That's
up
good.
in moderation now.
Yeah, I've been pretty hands-off because kind of like you, I think I ended up working from home for like 2 weeks or something like that. But then I was like, because I'm in construction and we've had a lot of special preferences, we had to kind of come back to work first. And so I didn't really feel much of a shutdown except for, you know, wife not being able to work and shit for 2 months plus. But yeah, it's weird. I'm trying to figure out, like, I kind of lost touch with what's open, what's not open, all this stuff, because it's like I'm still living like a hermit.
Most things now.
Yeah.
Most things, even in just limited fashion. That first week, 2 weeks ago, we went to fucking Silver City.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It was delicious.
You sent me that picture, and I was like, motherfucker. Fuck. So your girlfriend works. She's been working. You've been working.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You know?
Literally everyone I know, besides like, actually even Denzel's been working the whole time too. So like,
I don't even. What does Denzel?
He works for a contractor, basically carpentry.
Okay. Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. It's nice that we were able to find that kind of statewide loophole to be able to because I mean, what other than the shipyard, which is the number one employer in the county, I mean, everything, the next biggest has got to just be the construction industry.
Yeah.
And it's, for the most part, we don't work in close quarters. You know, we're more at risk in this room right now than we are normally working outside in our job. So that's good to hear. So because we're starting to get pretty close there, let's start to talk about music a little bit and your guys's. You know, the biggest thing, you know, I've been listening to a lot of Upper Left the last few days, and
appreciate it.
You know, we tried to talk a little bit. I don't remember if it was during the pre-show or something about how like SoundCloud has. Let's just say I've had a problem trying to find your guys' latest tracks and stuff on SoundCloud.
Okay,
like it's getting the way they organize and stuff like that. It's not ideal and all that stuff. I found better luck on Spotify and iTunes, which is good. I think
that's kind of what we're trying to execute that a little bit better. Because that's like most people are just everyone either, if you have an iPhone, you usually either have Apple Music or you have Spotify. So we definitely prioritize those two primarily. And like the way we have it set up, you have to like actively put your music on SoundCloud separately. So I think, I don't know, as far as the guys go, they probably just like, screw SoundCloud right now. But I know whenever I put my music out and like my tracks, I try to touch bases on everything. So
that's good, because you guys have quite the collection, and I think it's really interesting now looking at like even a couple of years ago where you guys were at then compared to now. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot more individual paths, I think, being laid forward. You know, like I've seen, like last night I was listening to one of your specific playlists that you have on SoundCloud, and I just sit there and let that run because you have your own PNW NILS playlist and it goes right through there. But, you know, and I know like Mac has an EP album out with his stuff, and Denzel's got his kind of thing going on, and RJ's got a playlist going of all his stuff. So while all you guys is that something that's actually happening? You guys are also doing individual paths as well as the Upper Left together? Do you guys just kind of generally work all together, and then, you know, this is more your project, this is more your project, this is more your project, so you throw your guys', you know, that particular name on it? It's just, you guys put out a lot of music.
Yeah, and the dynamic of the group.
It just seems to be, you know, what's the makeup of the group at this point, I guess? It seems to be a lot of individual projects combined with a lot of group projects.
Are you moving forward mostly collectively or individually?
There you go.
That's a good question. It's definitely kind of moved together as a group, but at the same time, we kind of sat down. So, like, to touch on the music video, John Sadek. So, John Sadek.
Yeah, okay.
John Sadek, still one of my best friends.
Went to school with him
to this day.
Really?
Yeah. So he was like, really nice he was about to go to school to get his master's and everything. He was like, fuck that. this is my calling. I'm just going to invest hella money. So we went like 50-50 on a lot of shit. I'm going to invest hella money and just get really good at like doing videography, YouTubing, all this other stuff, right? So the video is dope so far.
Really?
It's not done yet, but it's very dope. That should be out within the next couple of weeks.
I'm gonna hit up John Satak, get him on the show too.
It's
Tell him,
extremely
next
good,
time you
man.
see him, tell him
I
that I'm
will.
gonna be talking to him.
will.
He needs to come on here.
I will. So
Tell him
that's
about your experience.
I will know for sure. So that's a lot of what it was. And it's like talking to him, like talking about like our dreams and everything like that, you know, is like, you can't let any of these people down. Like Makai has a wife, dog. He's about to have a
Baby
kid.
on the way.
I-
Yep.
What's his Twitter handle? Future Daddy or Future Father?
Yeah,
Future
future father.
father.
Yeah. And it's like
The Peanut
A little
King.
baby.
the Peanut King. Fucking Denzel.
Well, and RJ too is like such a weirdo. He's just like, you know,
just
totally
one
good
guy,
way.
yeah.
Just do his
Does his
pictures
own
of
thing,
weird
yeah.
shit. Just his own. Yeah.
He's a guy.
RJ is an
He's
enigma.
somebody,
That
yeah,
I have said that to
definitely.
every member of your group. He is an enigma. He is extremely difficult to pin down. I asked him before I asked anyone else to come on here individually. I asked RJ, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll think about it." And I never heard from him.
RJ rolls in squads. He's not a solo act by any.
That's what
any
Denzel
means.
said. Denzel said, "Bring him on with someone else,
Yeah.
and then he'll come on."
He's a lot
I was
more
like, "Okay,
comfortable.
all right."
But as far as music goes, we're definitely releasing singles. That's just because we have so many singles. It's on me. I'm like the primary mixer, engineer. RJ will like help do like a lot of the in-house stuff. But before it's like all said and done, since the equipment's at my house, I'm the one that's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna mix this, make sure it's like up to standard, and I'll send it to them, make sure we go get the verbal back. And then that's how we'll release it. That's how we've been doing the past two songs, because Makai did his, Denzel did his, of course, The Fences, right?
Yeah,
Denzel has a
you guys
lot
are
of
putting
good
out
songs.
fire
tonight.
right now.
Yeah, so
That's what, not to interrupt, but that's what Denzel said when he was here, is that he had a lot of music that he
does.
didn't want to put out on SoundCloud because, and he said very humbly, he said, "I know what I'm worth."
no, he's good, man.
Yeah,
He's good.
He's fucking
He's good.
incredible.
He's good.
Denzel, you guys are all incredible.
Yeah.
Denzel, I was shocked.
Voice of an angel.
It is absurd
Yeah.
at how good his voice is. That is crazy.
I think it's luck of the draw. He's a big man.
That's why I think what got me about it. Yeah, I never met him before. I only knew Jordan, you know, from
Yeah.
going to school with him. And then when you guys came in his group, I was like, "This is fucking Denzel. Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ!" I just didn't expect that. All of you guys have like your own unique talent. You know, like obviously all collectively for music, but each individual thing, you know, and I think it would take me time to pin it all down. But that's what I'm going to work on. That's my mission for the next few weeks. By the next time that we're here, I'm going to have what I think each of their
Roles
unique qualities, not roles, but unique qualities. They're all good at making music. You know, they all have that in common. But, so Micaiah's I have nailed down because I just talked to him about this 2 days ago, right? Micaiah, to me, I was listening to him rap, and the way that he's able to make words fit whatever cadence he's rapping in at that time, I told him it reminded me a lot of Eminem, being able to just fuck up the way that he's pronouncing them to fit whatever scheme he's rhyming at the time. I think is very unique. It's very particular. You know, and I think you all have something like that in the group that makes you successful together. And then also when you make music individually, it's fucking incredible. Like you don't lose anything when you're making it all four of you or two of you or three of you. It's all, the quality is never changing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that speaks volumes about all of you guys as individuals, that it's not like Micaiah left and made his own thing, and it's like, oh, well, he's the only one that's actually making good shit. You know, like you made your own thing. RJ's made his own songs. Denzel's made his own songs, and they're all of equal caliber. Every time I'm just, this is great. Like, how are you not making all of the money in the world? You know, and
Yeah.
it's impressive. You're all uniquely impressive, you know, and also collectively as a group. And I think that that's very important. There are a lot of people that we've seen, Beyonce, Lil Wayne, that started as a group and were bigger than who they were, than where they started, you know. And it's not that you don't all deserve your own spotlight, but that you are all operating on the same level of intense talent that I think makes your collective work that much more impressive, you know, and your individual work that much more impressive, to see the quality never changing. You know, Lil Wayne and the Hot Boys, he was doing that shit for a long time, but Lil Wayne is unquestionably better than the rest of the people that he was rapping with, you know, like that's it. There's no question about that. So And I don't know, I don't want that to sound like a bad thing, but I don't see that type of thing within your guys' group where one person is going to be uniquely more talented than everybody else and have to like move away at something.
No,
you know?
No, I don't think so either. That's definitely not the plan. We talk about it. If anything happens, anyone blows up, in my mind, I haven't really talked to them about it. In my mind, till this day, I'll always defend Makai is my favorite when it comes to just making music because I like his songs. I just like something about him. I don't know.
He makes good
and then
shit,
if anyone's going to blow up, realistically, I think it's going to be Denzel. The name, the voice, the type of stuff that we can potentially get him to start doing, like get him out of his comfort zone, he just takes the longest to make music. Not saying it's not worth the wait, but he does take the longest out of the three of us. Obviously, rap singing is a lot harder.
Do you think is he a perfectionist? Is that why it's taking him so long?
It's a little bit, yeah. It takes a group of people to be like, even my songs, one of my best songs, they'll sing to this day, you know, and I probably won't release it for a while because art is art. But
yeah,
Denzel would be like, hey man, this is a good song. You have a gem here. You just need to release it. And he's like, not yet, you know. So
I love this picture on the with the suspenders and the bow tie.
That's at Makai's wedding,
That's
right?
at Makai's wedding.
Yeah.
That's from that Small City Big Dreams Volume 2 interview.
Yeah.
So they interviewed Denzel only.
Yeah, that's fine though. I had no idea he even did it. We don't talk like that. We touch bases on songs that's gonna get released, but we don't touch bases on like interviews. Like I think only RJ knows I'm here right now, to be honest with you.
And you guys don't have any issues like
No, because like we are individuals, but we are a collective at the end of the day. But it doesn't matter by any means. No one's getting paid to do anything yet, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. How many songs? Be as specific as you want, because now we know that you and Denzel both have songs just waiting. And I assume that all four of you do, but Denzel has a lot. How many songs do you have that you're just sitting on that you haven't released yet?
Roughly.
And you don't have to answer that if you don't. I understand the mystique. So I got a couple.
How deep is that vault?
We have no notoriety yet, so there's no mystique. There's no mystique. It's all personal. I personally have about 3 or 4. Literally one I put in the Dropbox last night because I was talking to RJ. I was like, RJ, I sampled your voice on this. And he was like, no way, I need to hear it because I want to hear it. Put it in the Dropbox. Forgot to take it out of the Dropbox where everyone else could hear it because I have like my own section where it's just like all mine.
Yeah.
And then Makai hit me up because he's like beating the Dropbox. Literally as I'm driving here, he's like beating the Dropbox. I listened to him like, hey, good beat. And he's like, dude, like this song, what? Like how? And he's like, I'm jealous. I have the messages and everything. He's like, I'm jealous and all this stuff. And like, I'm like, man, don't even say that because obviously I just said Makai's like my favorite guy.
Don't gas me up like that, dog.
Yeah, I was like, don't gas me up because like I made the beat and like the transition and everything like that. I like transitions a lot, but that will be out soon enough. Our plan is within the next 2 weeks we're gonna release an EP. There's 4 of us, right? Collectively, yeah. So we're shooting for like 3. We might do like 5. We have at least 3 songs aimed right now. They're going to be over at my house tomorrow. So we'll see what comes from that. I think it's 4 of us, man. It's time. We're all 25, 23, whatever Denzel fuck is. It's just time.
Young ass motherfucker.
You see all these other people, it's like the perfect time where people are actually staying inside listening.
Mm-hmm. Time to secure the bag.
It's time to secure the bag, yeah. Like, I'm not too scared to say like I'm super scared of it, but at the same time, like at what point, if I don't do it now, then I'm always just gonna have that regret. And I can't let these people down. Like to move to LA, have a mansion or something like that, and just network through that mansion, that would be the ultimate goal, I can't let these people down. I have to, it falls on me. A lot of it is on me and I just have to, carry that and I have to do it. I have to do this, man.
So why do you say that a lot of it falls on you?
Because I make a lot of the beats. I do like a lot of the engineering.
A lot of production.
Not saying that they don't, but...
Because they all make beats, right?
Makai makes beats. And Denzel does make beats. He made Fences. But primarily, it is either Jordan, Makai, or myself. A lot of RJ shit, that's me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, it's just like, if we can't do this in-house, like at what point... Right. Are we gonna be able to do it? We shouldn't have to rely on anyone else. There's 4 different minds that are all brilliant. I think we can do it. We just gotta be active. So
and it's the future. Yeah. We have the ability to do things all by ourselves.
Anything can happen.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about between the difference, because this is just mostly just ignorance in music and stuff. The difference between like album, EP, single.
So
Single's easy.
Yeah. So EP, I think the actual
Extended play, right?
extended play, but which is asked backwards because so EP is extended play, which is short. I think it's like within 25 minutes.
Yeah.
3 to 5 songs, I believe, is the guidelines for that.
Okay.
Then you have LP, which is like a normal album. That's long play. There's not really. I think it's just anything past EP is a long play, which is LP. So that's that.
And nowadays, because 99% of music is going to be consumed on a singles basis via streaming, is there really much validity in the waiting to like actually put out a full album with 10 to 13 tracks on it?
Oh my God, can I answer as a rap fan first? Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because Wolf by Tyler, the Creator, one of my favorite albums of all time, right? I don't know if you know this particular album.
Yeah.
When I had my Silver Frontier, that was the only CD that I played in that Frontier from the time that I got it to the time that I sold it. For over a year, the only CD I listened to was Wolf by Tyler, the Creator, because the crafting of the album is perfect. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West, all songs individually great, but if you listen to it from beginning to end, that's where we're really at.
So it's almost like
Artfully crafted, yes.
So an album, in its classic sense, was meant to be consumed at once.
Straight through.
Right?
Straight through.
But ever since, I want to say probably the 90s, albums kind of went out because you were able to consume a single track at a time or something like that. And
I
so
think people are going back though, and I want you to answer that too. But as a consumer of like, I'm not like on the cutting edge of music. Like Marquis Singleton is like really into music, all the time into music. He's always on new shit. I asked him about stuff, have him send me stuff. So I'm not on the cutting edge, but I like music, and I think that's definitely coming back. People willing to listen to an album in its entirety as opposed to just, obviously there are tracks that are going to be better than others or that are going to just hit super hard, shit like that. But I think if you have an album that you've designed to be listened to beginning to end as opposed to a compilation of 12 different singles, for a long time, I think themes and stuff like that, interludes, shit like that got taken out of albums, and so there wasn't a story to it anymore. It was just music put into one thing being released all collectively. Whereas, I don't know, like Eminem is like the first thing that comes to mind. He always interludes, and all of those albums back in the day in the 90s, all these interludes,
skits and all that.
Yeah, skits talking to his agents and different rappers and shit like that. Like that type of stuff was so prevalent. Wu-Tang Clan, all that shit. That's very prevalent. So, I think that's coming back in a big way. Albums with stories as opposed to just groups of songs being put out together. What do you think about that?
People still listen to albums. I think it went away, and like as soon as the CDs kind of got abolished, like once CDs went away,
skip a track.
Yeah, it's way easier to do that, right? But
I think that was the death of the album.
Instead of having like with a tape, you had to fast forward through and like know where the song started.
Exactly,
and shit. Yeah.
I would write down the fucking time so that on the Walkman.
For sure.
That's really funny.
Back in the old
I remember,
old school
I think
days.
Jordan and I were just talking about like walking and holding a CD player in your pocket, but like holding it flat, in your sweatshirt pocket so that it wouldn't skip or anything like that. If you're walking down the road. Yeah. I remember those
early
days. Couldn't even hold it straight up and down. Had to hold it flat. Or else it would.
I'm so glad we.
Anyone younger than 18 has no idea what we're talking about.
So we are running real short on time, and I have to ask you about this before we leave.
Okay.
Talk to me about Pink.
Pink. Oh, shoot. That was just, all right. So I released that under NILS. It was just random 3 songs. Did like every other week, right?
Holding On, You, and Sugar.
And Sugar, yeah.
Great stuff.
Oh, man.
Yeah, thanks. I literally just re-released it under the new moniker just because I had to have more discography under my name. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to... The idea was to have Pink be like the first set of EPs and then have like a yellow, blue, orange, green.
Word. Color
that
scheme.
it's probably still what's going to happen because I can make beats and I can like rap
like
to them
Weezer
fairly
almost.
fast.
Like a Weezer.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
So
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's probably what's going to happen. And but right now the main focus is now that RJ's song just dropped today. You should listen to it. Ring My Phone. Very good song.
Word.
Jordy made the beat. Jordy Sam made the beat.
Makes
RJ, it's a very good song. So definitely look that up. But yeah, the next focus is like focus on the group stuff, and then we will, recalculate everything else after that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I fuck with that, bro. We'll definitely know that we stand with you as far as your music goes, as far as blowing up your career. We're here with you. We had a conversation when the new year started of like now is the time, very similar to what you were talking about. Like if there is a time that we are to start making money and start hustling, now is the time when we have the opportunity. And when Denzel was here, we talked a lot about small businesses and starting things and trying to grow them and working together, with other small businesses and just doing what you can to support other people, even if it's just sharing people's stuff, and just how difficult it is. Denzel knew, you guys all know how difficult it is to get people to just share something on Facebook. That people, you'll see them at Safeway and they'll be like, man, that song you put out was fucking fire. Yeah. And it's like, then will you fucking just share it and show somebody. Show it. Just one person. Just don't even say anything. Just click share and accept and move the fuck on because you're already on goddamn Facebook. Won't do it. Can't get him to do it. It's
the hardest thing.
Don't know what the deal is, and I make an active. I try to do it before, and especially since that conversation with Denzel. If I see anything that you guys are making or someone else that we went to school with, I know that's making something, share it, it, and share it, like it and share it every time.
This is not that hard. It's 2 buttons. No. 2 buttons.
5 seconds. At the most, and I just so. We feel the struggle. You guys have been at it way longer than we have. You guys have been making music for a really long time. I mean, in high school, you guys were making music.
And arguably a lot more difficult industry to get into.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people making podcasts. There's even more people making music. We are with you, and we will. I told Makai, because I hit Makai, I think, when we had that same conversation about like securing the bag, and I was like, if we make it before you do, we are taking you guys.
Oh, for sure.
We are.
Best believe.
Yep. If we make it before you guys, we are taking you right the fuck with us. Don't even.
That theme song is going to be with us forever.
Yeah.
Period. You guys are credited at the bottom of every episode that's posted. Yep. Theme song. Produced, created, and written by Upper Left. So, we appreciate you being here. Is there anything else that you want to pimp before you leave? The video you have coming out, do you know when, or is it in the works?
It'll be within the month, man. I just hit up John the other day, so it'll be within the next month.
It's June 13th, so by mid-July, we'll have the very first, and it's an Upper Left video, right?
It's my song, actually.
It's your song.
It's two. They're all in it, but it's to, Wanted Right. So that's also a song that's everywhere,
Yeah.
PNW NILS, Wanted Right. Look that up. And it's to that. And it's a very fire video. You guys will be amazed. Because John is all in.
Pimp the shit out of it as soon as it comes out.
John's very smart. John, I have never been close to him, but I think we went to junior high with him too. Sure. So I've known John for a long time. Very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
Extremely intelligent.
Very driven guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm very interested in getting him in here.
I'm going to let him know right after this. Trust me.
I'm very interested in that. Again, thank you for being here. We're happy. I'm excited to listen to this episode when it comes out and just be able to listen more and hear about what we've talked about, try and take more. Because I know there was a lot of times in that 2 hours, that's some of the best conversations that I've had with anybody in an extrently long time. And I hope that you feel very similar to this. It was a very good conversation, made me think a lot, and just invigorated my brain, and I think that now is a time where people need to have difficult conversations. A lot of people have been saying that, but not necessarily difficult conversations that like make you upset or make you feel guilty about things you've done in the past, but just conversations that challenge your ideas and what you have established and what you think is best as far as moving forward in the country. I think this is the time to understand people's ideas, you know?
Signaling is not good enough right now. We need to have conversation because what's going on right now is so... I think this is like one of the first chances in recent history we have as a society to make real, like, tangible change. But we can't fuck it up.
Yeah,
by just getting lost in whatever signaling, whatever nonsense is happening.
Yeah.
It's too important to fuck up. And even having you here just to help us walk through some of this stuff has been immensely helpful for me, and I'm sure for Donovan. Every time we sit down and we talk, this is like my therapy session every 2 weeks, and this one has been particularly helpful.
Can I leave you guys with like a question, just like a little bit of a cliffhanger?
Anything?
Absolutely.
No, that's it. I definitely don't want the answer right now.
Completely forgot to even ask you about your social issue. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, you're good. No. Hey, no, it doesn't even matter.
We'll have you back again soon because this was a great episode. I'm really happy to have you. So yes, ask away.
It's a little.
We'll think about it and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, it's a little out of the park. It's a little, left field, but I have to ask because you guys do have like a following, and I definitely value that, and I appreciate your guys' like feedback and everything like that. So like the next time I see you guys, I would love to like hear what your guys' thoughts on this. But in regards to like the N word, right? When growing up, people would always ask, like during February, Black History Month, when they always look at you and are like, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Well, I was talking to Denzel and RJ not too long ago, probably like a couple months ago. And we like kind of like, we're like, holy shit. And we were talking, we're like, I can't explain it, but when someone says the N-word that's not the same skin tone as me, something's embedded in my DNA that I know something's not right. And it's not something you necessarily had to teach me that as a young kid, right? I just knew it. Like, it's just something my ears perk, kind of like a dog that hears something, right? You're just like, something doesn't feel right. So that same feeling, I wonder, and maybe you guys can contribute to this. I don't know. Like, obviously, I'm not calling you guys racist by any means, but I'm just saying that same feeling that I feel, I wonder if the other side of the spectrum feels like power when they say it. Kind of like, so say, if you break it down to the simplest times, or, way back times, slavery, they hate that word, right? On the other side of the spectrum, when the slave owner says it, they feel like the empowerment through it, right? So I always wondered, and I just kind of want to have that conversation, is people don't talk about it from the other standpoint. They only talk about it from, oh, what does a black person think when that happens? How do you feel? Well, how do you feel when you say it? Do your ears perk? How do you feel? Do you get a lot of courage from saying it? Because I don't know. I always just wanted to ask that. I feel like no one talks about it.
Yeah, it's always talked about how it's being received and how it's being sent.
Yeah, like what makes you feel... Like, what happens in your mind when you say that word?
First of all, I don't.
No, for sure. I'm just saying, yeah.
I learned at a very young age. I was like, no. This
generally just when discussing the concept.
Yeah.
So I can answer it briefly, and then I'll think more deeply about it. Prior to when you guys came in the last time, we asked you guys about it, about how you guys felt about it. RJ spoke very strongly about not even using it in songs or anything like that, right? And so I never gave much thought to it, like when I was by myself and I'm like rapping.
Of course not.
I never like really thought about it, but I did after RJ mentioned it. That he said that it made him uncomfortable, and so it's something I've thought about since then, even when I'm by myself, and it was never something, because you've known me for a long time, it's never something that I've used as a slur or anything like that, only ever in music. And so I never felt power from it, like almost... Unity maybe is not the right word, but it always, especially in regards to music, always felt like such a collective thing to me that like this is for like I'm making this music for everybody, not just for people or not just for black people, not just for whatever, And so to me, it was almost a unity thing, not like finally one thing we can do together, but that like this is something that everyone can do.
Makes you feel a part of it.
And the same thing, there's a time and place, that if I was that white girl that RJ talked about on stage with Kendrick Lamar, I don't know that I would say it if I was in front of all those people. I probably wouldn't, but I also can understand a sense of confusion on that girl sense of like this. Every time I've been by myself and I've done this, it's been something that, and it doesn't make it right. So there's a time and a place, and it's inappropriate and probably shouldn't have done that, but I also understand the confusion of in a music sense, as far as people throwing it with a hard R as a slur. I think that those people, because I've never called anyone that like to try and get after them or anything like that. So
that's gotta come from a dark place.
So I can't.
If you're like using that as a slur at somebody,
I have to imagine the power comes from your expectation of reaction. Because a white person using that now, if I were to call you that doesn't provide me the power that it did if I was a slave master and I called my slave that. Yeah. This is my power over you. Now, it's a sign of ignorance that you think that should be offensive, or that you think that is a characteristic of this person that you're talking to, And so I think that the power, because I think they have to. I think to use that word to try and describe someone and demean them, you have to at least expect some type of powerful feeling out of it. The same with calling someone stupid or fucking retarded or whatever you're saying. You're expecting to get some type of good feeling out of that. And I think the power that they feel only comes from the expectation of reaction. You know, that because you're black, if someone called you that, they expect you to be mad. So because you're mad, I controlled this situation. Now I've chosen how this is going to be.
Interesting.
It's an attempt to control that situation and that person and their emotions, you know? And so, and I'm not telling you how to react at all because far be it from me, but I think that the power for them comes from the reaction, you know? If someone did call you that and you didn't, I mean, I think you're all in your rights to punch him square in the fucking mouth, you know? Yeah. But if you didn't and all you did was just yell and scream and be upset, all the power is immediate in that person's hand because they've dictated the course of this situation. Yeah. You know? So I think that it provides them less power if they get punched in the goddamn mouth for it because it shows them exactly how stupid it was. But I think the power just comes, first of all, from ignorance, but also from an expectation of reaction, you know, because they can expect to try and dictate the situation. Mm-hmm. I can only theorize because I've never used it to try and, but that's what I would expect is that they would just hope like this is what'll do it, you know, because if that's what you're resorting to, like this is what's going to do it. This is what's going to
that's
really
the one
them,
trump
you know?
card, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's from an expectation of reaction and an expectation of emotion that they would get some sense of power from it.
I think you're 100% right.
I also kind of come at it from a point of if you're going to do that, I think context matters in that point because not only would you be expecting a reaction and trying to come out on top, but you're also trying to hurt somebody.
Yeah, certainly,
and that
to the core.
It's purely
on a
out of malice.
level.
Yeah, like on a bad.
Because I honestly think you should end the episode like after Eli asks that question. I think that should like
that was going to be it. Yeah,
done.
Amazing question, incredibly thought provoking, and I'm on the same page as Donovan. But to a further point, that like if you're going to call someone that and expect a reaction, you're almost kind of. Not to Candace Owens, but this is kind of a point that she made.
Oh, that bitch! We didn't even talk about her. Fuck!
Like, people
God damn
expect you to act that way. They call you that word because they expect you to act that way. So if I call you that word and get you to beat the shit out of me, is that not how you're acting?
Yeah, you still win.
Proving my point now.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's just a trump card to like win the situation over. To be like, well, this word hurts you. Prove me wrong.
Like calling someone a racist.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you can't back out of that. You know.
That's just a question. I don't know. Once we were talking,
that's a great question.
We definitely thought about it, and we were like, we came up with like all the possibilities. We were just like, I wonder how like most people feel about it.
Tell them we talked about it.
Moments today. You brought like a lot of thought provoking stuff to the table.
This was a great episode.
Absolutely. This is my favorite episode. Yeah. This is I've listened to all of them. This is I was almost in tears over here a couple times. Like this is my favorite episode. This is fucking I'm like that was so good. The energy was great. You guys, that was great.
Really happy you're here.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Love it.
Okay, well, with that, one more time.
So let's think about this, right? Because even if we leave this in at this point, if we do want to cut it off right at that question and pretend like we didn't think about it for a little while and address it next episode, what we thought about after the next couple of weeks on his question, talk about it then. We can make a cut and then immediately, all right, well, now that the cliffhanger question is done, we can end out with our line. Boom. Or do we just leave all of that in?
I think you just leave it.
I think we leave it, and then we'll talk about it again next week.
Yeah. It's a different kind of episode. It needs to be thought-provoking. Because
Josh Keaton, I'm sure, will also be interested in that question.
He says your next guest.
Josh Keaton will be on in 2 weeks.
And ask him that. Yeah, I wonder what his input is on that, too, because everyone feels the same way.
Well, and he he was just in college, so... Yeah. He just met a lot of people from a lot of different places. So I'm interested just to hear his experience and shit like that. So
cool.
Yeah. So with that, I think that we can cut off at the end. I want to thank you for being here. This is a fucking great episode, obviously. One of my favorites for sure. You are at PNW NILS, and that is at Twitter and at Instagram. And I don't know if you want to do your Facebook because that's like your personal Facebook. But you can find the group at Upper Left. They're on SoundCloud, on Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere that you can find music. They're going to have a video video here soon. It's going to be on YouTube, right? Do you guys have a YouTube page already?
No, we're gonna make that.
Okay, cool. So they're
Start
gonna
fresh.
Yep. And so we will post that when we hear from you guys. When we get the video, we'll obviously share that all over the place.
We'll post it on the website too, I think, can we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
We can post the links. We can do all that shit. So we also have their links on our website, and for every episode that we do, their links and their names are there, so you can find them. This episode that you're listening to right now, you can, if you want to keep up with us and more of the discussions that we're having in between episodes. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. And Colin is at Big Word Offie on both of those things. Facebook.com/Salt of the Street, Salt of the Streets at YouTube, Salt of the Streets Instagram, saltofthestreets.com. We're out here. All right. So with that, Colin, she wasn't gross. She wasn't that gross. Maybe if you lowered your standards, you get laid more often.
Just leave my linebacker girlfriend out of this, Donovan.